How's it going, everyone? My name is Michael SK, and welcome back to Higurashi When They Cry Chapter 2. We have confronted Mion to see if she is indeed the, I guess, the one behind everything that's been happening in terms of disappearances. It seems to be that's the case, or at least she's connected to whatever is going on. She's the one who was on the phone with Soroko and Rika-chan, and she's the last one that actually saw the mayor. So it all really does lead to her being the culprit, if you will. And she has now presented to us, not just as Mion, but as Mion Sonozaki, acting leader of the Sonozaki family. And now we're getting a rundown or a history lesson or something. Before we start, I need to open my drink so I don't do it randomly later. I don't know why I didn't do this prior. This is not soda. This is sparkling ice. Completely off topic, but goddamn, can I not recommend this enough. Let us continue on. Runa nodded lightly and then shot me a glance asking if I did. I returned her nod. Hinamizawa was once called Watanagashi village, yes. I heard all about it that night from Takano-san in the ritual storehouse. They firmly believed that demon blood ran through their veins and cut off all contact with the outside world. They were worshipped by those in the villages at the foot of the mountains, and treated like transcendents, those capable of magic.
そうです。鬼ヶ淵村のご先祖様たちは、鬼の血を引く誇り高き仙人たちでした。麓の村々の人たちは、崇め、そして敬いました。ですが、そういう空気も、徳川の世が終わるとともに廃れていきました。
The black ships arrived. The era of the samurai ended. The era of national isolation ended. And the tradition of worshipping Watanagashi village quickly disappeared. Those things that linger from the past were all to be detested. That was the kind of era it became.
明治になり、古い歴史を持つ鬼ヶ淵村の名称は、一方的にHinamizawa村に改められてしまいました。古い因習を一掃しようとする明治政府の思惑が強く働いたのだと聞かされています。
The abolition of feudal domains and the establishment of prefectures. An era had begun, seeing Japan sprinting up the stairs that were beyond their means to try and reach the same level of the rest of the world. All things in the Western style were to be extolled, while old traditional things were to be scorned. That was the sort of era it was.
そういう時代の激変の中で、滝壺に落ちていく花びらのように、あっという間に鬼ヶ淵村は消えてしまったのです。
At last, Japan, provoked by the great European powers colonizing countries in Asia one by one, began a policy to increase its wealth and military powers so that it could stand as a global power in its own right. Conscription began, and they won war after war. The first Sino-Japanese War and the Russo-Japanese War, and until the Pacific War broke out. Not Russo, it's Russo, I'm pretty sure. Sorry, I don't remember my pronunciations from history class. They recklessly climbed the staircase towards modernization.
この頃には、もう鬼ヶ淵村の不可侵性は失われていました。かつて仙人と崇められた村人たちは、否認扱いを受け、神聖な鬼ヶ淵村はいつの間にか疫病患者の隔離集落の慣れの果てであるという根も葉もないレッテルを貼られ、苦難の時代を迎えることになった。
I did not mean to cut you off there, Mion, I am sorry. Thus began harsh days where one would suffer unreasonable discrimination just because people knew one was from Watanagashi. The children in the village at the foot of the mountain were taught not to go near Hinamizawa because filthy germs were rampant there. Children who had come in contact with children in Hinamizawa would cry and wail as their parents purified the spot they were touched by rubbing salt on it. One of the... wait, hold on, what the fuck? One of the adults said to the children that if you got lost in Hinamizawa, you would be kidnapped by demons, cut up into pieces, and devoured. Never, ever go near the terrifying village of the man-eating demons. And that's what he taught him. Another said that during a famine long ago, The people of Hinamizawa gathered up all the corpses they discarded into the dry riverbeds and then cooked and ate them in order to survive. Groundless stories, but said in such seriousness. Baseless slander added to baseless slander, making Onigafuchi Village's historically accurate, thrilling history all the more believable. Perhaps the chain of undue discrimination was a manifestation of the people's anxiety towards uncertain times. Of course, the story didn't only end with the perspective of children. If anyone found out you were from Onigafuchi, you would be turned down from any job you applied for. People would even go back on engagements and marriage proposals. As for the marriages where one partner had lied about it, as soon as the truth got out, they were made to divorce.
裁判も起こしました。出身の問題は離婚する重要な理由にはなり得ないと訴えて、でも敗訴しました。出身の虚偽は結婚の上での重大な詐称行為にあたるのだそうで。
ひどいね、そんなの。
I've heard about such discrimination towards those in small villages in civics class. Just because others knew you were from a tiny hamlet, you would be subjected to every societal disadvantage there was. Excuse me, a modern form of bullying. Though I only memorized that because it was going to be on a test one time. I recalled being suspicious about it, and unable to believe such discrimination occurred in modern Japan. Man, I can't believe a lot of discrimination existed at one point. I'm happy to see that there is progress in the world, especially in my country of the US, but we still have a long way to go. History is there for a reason.
まあ、
And
自業自得と言えないこともないのかもしれません。
I didn't even say what the fuck?
私たちのご先祖様は自分たちに鬼の血が流れていることを誇りに思い、自慢し、麓の人々を蔑んで暮らしてきたのですからね。
Again, I mean for my Siri to activate there, but hopefully my commentary made some sense there. Or maybe Siri was just tired of me rambling. Who knows?
その神秘性で麓の村人たちを怖がらせ、畏怖と貢ぎ物の献上を要求してきたのですから。
With that, Mion smiled for the first time, albeit in self-mockery.
太平洋戦争中は国民一丸のスローガンが流れながらも、Hinamizawa村の人々はさまざまな差別を受け続けました。数え出したらキリがないくらい、夫や息子を戦場に送り出し、15の女たちも心がすさんでいたのでしょうね。当時をよく覚えている祖母は、それは苦しい時代だったと回想しています。
Even that bitterly long war, however, finally ended in 1945.
多数の男手を失ったHinamizawaにも、ようやく父や夫、息子たちが戻ってまいりました。もちろん、帰らぬ者も多かった。それでも、男手がなく村を維持することにすら限界をきたしていたHinamizawaにとって、それはとても喜ばしいことでした。
MacArthur's Ch.2 set to work on drastically improving mindsets and strove for the abolition of unfair discrimination. They could feel day breaking on the dismal night that was the previous era.
廃村寸前だったHinamizawaをもう一度立て直そう。そういう機運が高まり、村人たちは村を少しでも豊かにするために働き始めました。
During that time, someone appeared who built up a fortune through a vast number of dealings in the black market. That was Mion's grandfather, the husband of the elderly current family leader, Sohei Sonozaki.
宗平は中国大陸に出兵し、ハルピンで食料倉庫の管理をしていたといい、撤退時に上官や仲間たちと共謀して軍の缶詰をごっそりと盗み出していたのでした。それを瀬戸内海某所に隠し、闇市で高値で売りさばいて大きな富を得たのです。
Sohei didn't spend that fortune for his own pleasure either. He entrusted the entire amount to his wife, the head of the Sonozaki family, or Sonozaki house, excuse me.
廃れたHinamizawaを復興させよう。村人すべては家族であり、 この富は共有の財産である。現当主である祖母はそう宣言しました。この大きな富はその後のHinamizawaの復興の大きな力となったのです。
I see. With that, Hinamizawa came back to life, and that's how the Sonozaki family had established its current prosperity.
もちろん、闇市で財を成したことを妬む人たちも大勢いましたが、もう村人は気にしなかった。
They succeeded at one business venture after another. Those who had succeeded freely supported those who followed them. The giant family of Hinamizawa, tied together with strong bonds, kept on expanding its influence. The Sonozaki family, the center of everything, would be extolled for a long time as the minds behind Hinamizawa's revitalization.
その活躍の中心人物がみーちゃんのおばあちゃんなんだね。すごいよね。大活躍。
Mion looked like she was honestly happy Rena had praised her.
ですが、昭和30年頃にまたしても逆風が吹き始めます。それが缶詰疑惑でした。
Huh? Canned flesh? It sounded so hideous that just hearing it made me nauseous.
祖父、園崎宗平の上官だったと名乗る男が告白したのです。彼の調達した缶詰は実は食材を用いたものではなかったのだと。
Hinamizawa, a village in which demons lived and ate humans. They were just about to wipe away that cursed stigma. The light they had finally started to see in their peaceful lives grew hazy and disappeared. The shocking truth, as revealed by his former superior, the stolen provisions from the old Japanese army that had been a huge cornerstone for Hinamizawa's revival, had been canned human flesh. Why were there cans like that? Wasn't Sohei just the manager of food warehouses? His superior revealed that Sohei Sonozaki did not have the job of managing the food. Okay, well, Mio doesn't have a voice line here. In reality, Sohei's job during the war had been to exterminate pestilent mice and to transport the corpses of those with infectious diseases. It had been unfair treatment, and all because of the lowliness of his origins. As a result, though, he had returned safely without having been sent to the front lines or being detained. Perhaps that was the only fortunate thing to happen to him. Finally, Sohei was enlisted as an assistant at a military medical institution. There, however, he found something even worse than the low, scorned, depressing customs of Onigafuchi village and the research they were carrying out. Could that have been, well, you know, the bacteriological corpse in the old Japanese army or whatever? Keiichi-kun, you've heard of that? What could it be? I was pretty sure it was Unit 731. It was a nightmare unit that devoted itself to researching terrifying bacteriological weapons to break the deadlock in the war. They used many innocent people as fodder for horrible human experiments. They methodically observed how many days a new strain would take to kill the victims, how many days it would be when injected, how many days it would be when swallowed. They dissected many people to find that out. Sometimes they wouldn't bother waiting until they were dead and dissected them while they were still alive. They would strap them into centrifuges while still alive and crush them in decompression chambers while still alive. When a live human decompresses, all the holes in their body gets pushed outwards, and their intestines get pushed out of their anus like a snake winding out of it. What the fuck? I have a feeling I saw something like that on a documentary one time. And that makes me sick. And they still hate Hinamizawa, huh? You said it. Mion agreed with me, giving a faint, sad smile. It wasn't much in the way of communication, but for some reason I was happy to have it right now.
宗平がいた部隊はより現実的で温情的な研究をしていました。それは戦地での困難な食料調達に関する具体的な手法の研究でした。
The military's designs at the start of the war completely fell apart, and a chronic food shortage broke out all over the battlefront. The food shortage led to malnutrition, and as their natural resistances lowered, the soldiers fell to one disease after another. Spirit and morale lowered as well, and they wouldn't be able to maintain their forces at this rate. Apparently that's where the research started. At first, it was to find methods of delivering food to battlefields. It was very broad and included things from violent methods like stealing it from citizens to survival methods like how you cook unfamiliar insects and plant life. As they were working out the details, they kept straying off course and going out of control until they finally knocked down a door called Taboo.
戦場で一番入手しやすいタンパク源は何だと思います？
I don't want to say it. Rena and I knew the answer without being told, so we didn't answer.
そう、彼らは通常は食しないものを食材として扱う方法を研究していたのです。彼らは時には敵の、時には望まぬ食物をハンデでも戦い抜くことが国に報いる究極の方針になる。そういう競技を大真面目に組み上げていったのです。滑稽な話ですね。祖父を過去のことで蔑んでおきながら、自分たちはさらにその上を言っていたのですから、祖父はいつも思っていたそうです。たとえ世間の噂がどうあれ、彼らはそれよりもはるかに醜い鬼なんだと。だからいくら蔑まれたってちっとも答えないと。
At last, they had a handful of test prototypes. When the soldiers learned it was human flesh, however, the scientists couldn't make anyone eat it. So it was apparently sent to the front lines. The cans were labeled meat substitutes, so that they wouldn't accidentally eat it themselves, they stamped the bottoms with a circle.
お腹を空かせた前線の兵隊さんにはどの試作品もとても好評だったそうです。中でも醤油で煮たすき焼き風のものが一番好評だったそうで。
もうやめてよみーちゃん。気分が悪くなってきた。
Rena really was pale-faced, and she looked like she was having difficulty continuing to sit on her knees. Mion looked like she had more to say, but she sighed lightly and stopped there.
じゃあ、そのミオンのじいさんが持ち帰ったという缶詰は？
真偽は分かりません。晩年まで僧兵は世間の風評を否定し続けました。ですが、Hinamizawaの急激な復興を妬む人々はその疑惑を真実のように面白おかしく書き立て、村人をまたしても蔑み始めたのです。また子供たちが林立てられ、石を投げつけられる時代に戻ってしまったのです。
The stifling silence came back. What a seriously hopeless and sad story it was. They discriminated, were discriminated against, discriminated, and were discriminated against. Why must they attach worth and rank to it? Why can't they live without looking down on people? Why can't everyone enjoy life together? I didn't know.
当主である祖母はある時村の子供たちにこう言いました。
Sorry, I was getting a drink. If they throw a stone at one of you, then two of you must throw stones back. The children asked her, what if they threw stones at two of us? Of course, the answer was simple.
2人に石を投げられたら4人で石を、8人に棒で覆われたら16人で追い返し、30人に中傷されたなら60人で怒鳴り返せと。
Always come back, doubled the power. Finally, the children asked, what if we're attacked by 1,000 people? Even that answer was simple. 2,000.
1000人に襲われたならHinamizawaの全員で立ち向かいなさいと。それは決起を促す劇のようですらありました。祖母は園崎本家当主としてだけでなく、Hinamizawaの母太郎として立ち上がったのです。
It was halfway through 1955. It was a time when riots over the treaty with the US were rampant, a time of battle and action. The people of Hinamizawa joined together and fought, treating unfair discrimination towards one as a crime against them all. It didn't matter whether that one was a child or an adult. If they heard that a child had been told off, then everyone would crowd the house of the perpetrator, acting as a whole. If they heard an adult had been treated unfairly, men and women, young and old, would all band together and stand up against it. If you meddled with people from Hinamizawa, you would be in trouble. They probably figured that if they could make others think that, they would win.
ケイちゃんも町で不良に絡まれた時、 たくさんの人たちに助けられたのを思い出しませんか？
I recalled how much of an impression it had left on me. That the people of Hinamizawa boldly came to my rescue, yet the people of Okonomiya averted their eyes so they wouldn't get involved.
祖母が戦い、両親がそれを引き継ぎ、ようやくHinamizawaにも平和が戻った。もっとも、その平和もとても薄い川の上に乗ったものです。この100年の歴史を見れば、今の平穏など揺れ返す天秤のたまたまの狭間としか言えないでしょう。
どうして？
Could I really have an opinion on such a long and difficult history when I hadn't moved here from more than a year ago? Yet I said it anyway.
どうしてみんなで仲良く暮らし合えないんだよ。高野さんに聞いたお社様の昔話はどうなったんだよ。
Man and demon joined hands and lived together in harmony. Didn't Oyashiro-sama remain in this world to watch over that?
おとぎ話です。人と鬼は実在しても、それを調停するお社様は実在しなかったということです。
それでお社様のたたりを起こすことになったの。
A cool gust of wind blows in from outside, fluttering Mion's long, beautifully clear hair, Mion kept her refreshing smile without answering and didn't even change her expression. But even that became a silent answer.
Hinamizawa村を再び鬼ヶ淵村のように崇められるに足る神聖な存在に。それが我ら鬼ヶ淵村の末裔の悲願であり、園崎本家の鬼を継ぐ者の宿命なのです。
鬼を継ぐ者？
我が園崎本家は代々当主の名に鬼の一字を加える習慣があるのです。私の名前を手のひらにでも書いていただければ一目瞭然かと。
I trace out the word Mion on the palm of my hand. Oh, she's right. The character for demon is in there.
名前だけではありませんよ。この体にも鬼が刻まれているのです。
When she said that, she quietly rose and began to lay her hand on her clothing.
いいよみーちゃん、見せる必要なんて全然ない。
ありがとう。
With just that exchange, I guessed what she meant. Most likely, somewhere on her body, there was a permanent seal, such as a tattoo or marking that proved that she inherited the demon. Mion didn't sit back down. She smoothly opened the paper door onto the porch. A refreshing breeze began to cleanse the damp air filling the room. Mion quietly gazed out at the wide yard for quite a while. On her shoulders was something I could never imagine the normal Mion carrying. It was the heavy, truly heavy history of Hinamizawa. No, of Onigafuchi weighing down on them. What kind of words could I possibly say to a Mion like that? Rena wasn't saying anything to her either. Only the voices of the cicadas drowned out the silence. At last, after a long period of nothing, Mion murmured,
この5年間の連続事件ね。私が直接関わったものもあるし、間接的に関わったものもある。
Oh?
いくつかは園崎家だけでなく、他の御三家の君吉家や古出家が関わっているものもあるけど、そのすべての中心に私がいたと思う。
She said it all without turning around with her back to us. At some point, her tone of voice had gone back to being the Mion we knew.
私は自分のしたことには信念を持ってるし、罪の意識などまるでない。
You don't feel any guilt.
あるとすれば、私の跡継ぎも決まらないうちに舞台を退かねばならないことくらいかな。私を捕まえて、それで法治国家の体裁が整うなら、それも時代の流れかなって。この100年で一番平和なHinamizawaを見ながら引退できるのは、ひょっとすると歴代の園崎家の当主で一番の幸せなのかもしれないし。
Mion leaned a shoulder against the paper door and then slid down it and flopped on the ground. It was an act of such resignation that just seeing it made me hurt inside. The numerous terrible crimes Mion had been a part of suddenly began to fade from my mind. Hey, Mion, I don't care what happens after this. Can't you just try to struggle as much as you can? Try to run away? As soon as I began to think that way, Rena's ringing voice filled the room.
でもみーちゃんはリカちゃんとサトコちゃんを殺したんだよね。
The sharp points of her words stabbed into my chest, despite not being directed at me.
他の人のことは殺してもいいとも言わないよ。でもとにかくみーちゃんはリカちゃんとサトコちゃんを殺した。
Rena's words were more biting than any I had ever heard. Even now, that we knew all the heavy history pressing down on Mion's shoulders, she had criticized her for killing our friends.
私が園崎家の役目を負うように、リカちゃんだって古出家の役目を負っていた。
Right?
その役目が西宮殿を守ることだった。
My chest tightened.
去年あたりからリカちゃんが言ってたのは知ってたんだよ。西宮殿の勘抜きが重くて辛い。もっと簡単な鍵に付け替えたいって。先代の神主さんでも重いと嘆いてた代物だからね。リカちゃんに辛いのは重々承知だった。
僕がちゃんと番をしますですから、もっと軽い鍵に変えてほしいなのです。
I replied on the behalf of the Sonozaki family leader. Ever since the string of freak death incidents, there seem to be people who are insolent towards Oyashiro-sama, so you shouldn't replace the lock with a simpler one. That said, the leader of the Kimiyoshi family, old man Kimiyoshi, he... If it's that difficult for you, Rika-chan, then I think it's okay to replace the lock, he said. The very fact that it was locked with a key was an indication of it being somewhere you mustn't enter. There's nobody bad enough to break through it and go inside, he said. Even if we were alike as leaders, I couldn't find it in me to argue with old man Kimiyoshi, since I owed him so much. In the end, we decided to change out the lock on the storehouse and switched it to a really cheap and light padlock.
おじいちゃん、本当に大丈夫なんですか？バッチャもできることなら鍵は前のままの方が良かったと言ってます。
大丈夫だよ。心配性だな。何かあったらおじいちゃんがちゃんと責任を取ってあげるから。
And by saying that,
本当ですね。君吉家の当主として責任を取られるという意味ですね。おじいちゃんもこの中に収められているものがどれだけ神聖なものかよくご存知のはず。
大丈夫なのですよ。このひなみ沢に鍵を開けて勝手に入ってしまう悪い猫さんはいませんなのです。にゃーにゃー。
back to that shit. Sobs escaped from my mouth. Something hot and wet dripped down in spades and fell onto the tatami mat.
西宮殿に賊が忍び込んだという話は渡長市の祭りの最中にもう私の耳に入っていました。賊は4人。その日のうちに手が下されることになりました。同時に西宮殿に賊を許した古出家のリカちゃんと君吉家のおじいちゃんも責任を問わなければならなくなってしまった。
My tears dripped and dropped, until just now I had decided that it was Mion's fault that she killed Rika-chan and the others. That was wrong. The one who killed them wasn't Mion, it was me.
俺が殺したも当然なんだ。
ケイチ君。
I had a chance to stop this tragedy from happening, and yet I didn't. Sheep curiosity got the better of me, and I didn't. If at the time I had stopped us from sneaking into the ritual storehouse, Rika-chan and the others wouldn't have had to die. If I had, then nothing would have happened. We would be spending our days having lots of fun like we always did.
俺がバカだった。
If by shedding tears I could take it all back, then I would have filled up the room with them. However, such a meager act wouldn't be enough to redeem myself for the crime that I've committed.
ケイちゃんは何も悪くないよ。
Yes, we are. We were literally one of the 4 quote-unquote thieves. I still don't think it's thievery, we didn't steal shit. Mion gently began to speak at me, as if trying to reason with me.
私は園崎家の当主として手を下さなければならなかったけど、園崎家の歴史なんか 今にして思えば大したものじゃない。そんなもの全部投げ出しても私は仲間を救うべきだったのかもしれない。私がそんなものに屈したからあの二人を殺してしまった。それは他でもない、私園崎美音が殺したということ。私には踏みとどまる100億の瞬間があった。でも踏みとどまらなかった。安易に自らの役割に屈し、仲間のために戦うことを放棄してしまった。だからこれは私の罪。私が殺した園崎美音がこの手で殺してしまった。それは何ら変わらない。何も
Her masochistic laughter was sad, especially because Mion boasted in club that she would turn the tables on whatever predicaments presented themselves. It was so painful.
でもみーちゃんは自分の意志で一人だけ救ったんだね。
え？
As I looked at her in surprise, Rena stuck her finger right at my forehead.
圭一くんだけを殺さなかった。
For now.
こんなにも強い力を持つみーちゃんなら造作もなかったろうに。でも殺さなかったんだよね。
That's right. Mion was so cunning that nobody could stand up to her, even in our club, if she had seriously tried to kill me. I would have been dealt with on the very first night. So many people had been sacrificed, but I was always left out in the cold. When did I first realize it? Even though people were disappearing one after the other, for some reason I had this vague belief that only I would be left alive.
さて、どうして殺さなかったのかね。鬼の私にゃ見当もつかないわ。ミオンの方に殺したくない都合でもあったんじゃないの？
そりゃどういう意味だよ。
Shh. Mion put a finger to her lips to say that Rena didn't need to talk.
大石は外で待ってんの？
うん。
逃げ場は？
ない。ぐるっと囲んでるって言ってた。無線でたくさんの車が来てるみたいだったよ。みーちゃん家の広い敷地を全部囲んでると思う。
Mion fell silent. Rena's merciless words felt cruel. But they weren't meant to be. Maybe they were trying to lessen her good friend's pain, but if only by a little, maybe they were considerate, like she was trying to help.
自首しよ。
Mion didn't open her mouth, but she smiled just a little.
私たちも一緒に行くよ。親友を一人きりになんか絶対に。
泣くことレナには勝てないわ。
She rose, scratching her head. Her face had returned entirely to that of the usual Mion.
自分で自分の罪、どのくらいになるかよくわかってる。
Oh, but I still killed him.
たとえ自首が認められても、多分もうここに帰ってくることもないと思う。
No. You'll never be let out of prison. Ever. Like, okay, I'm not thinking of, like, the Japanese judicial system, but I know in America, if you were to do what Mion did, you're done. Forever. Like, fuck parole. I couldn't say anything. The number of deaths Mion was involved in was just too large. So much so that maybe recommending that she turn herself in was in a way extremely cruel.
だから最後にわがままを聞いてほしいな。
何かな。
30分でいいから。
Oh no.
ケイちゃんと二人きりにしてほしい。
Oh no. No, 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 no. Huh? My name suddenly came up, and it looked like I was the only one surprised about that.
ケイチくん、どうかな。ケイチくんが嫌なら無理にとは言えない。
そうだね。嫌ならそれでもいいよ。私は鬼だもの。
Yeah, and a murderer.
ケイちゃんはよそから引っ越してきた正真正銘の人間。相入れることなんてお社様が実在して仲介してくれない限り絶対にない。
There was no reason for me to hesitate. Mion had been engulfed by heavy, unopposable tradition. The one who had forced her to kill her friends with her own hands, that was me and me alone. In fact, with me cornered, it would have been okay for her to blame me. However, Mion didn't say one word of blame. Far from it. I was guilty of the same crime and she let me go. Amidst the fate she could not oppose, she saved me alone. I didn't know whether I should be thankful for that. Thinking upon it now, I didn't know how much easier it would be if I were to be granted the same punishment as Rika-chan and the others. The only thing I knew for sure was that I had an equal duty to bear, the sins that Mion shouldered. So when it came to Mion's last request, there was no reason for me to hesitate.
あ、いいぜ。
ありがとう。私からもありがとうを言うよ、ケイチ君。
Rena stood up. It looked like she would keep her promise with Mion and leave.
あ、いいよレナ。ここで待っててくれれば。ケイちゃんとは庭をぐるりと回りたいだけだから。退屈だったら私の部屋へ行けばいい。あ、なんだったらお気に入りの単行本丸ごと持ってってもいい。
嫌だよ。みーちゃんの本はみーちゃんのものだもの。勝手にレナの家に持って帰れない。
あんたはこんな時に限っていい子なんだから。
Mion took Rena's head and rubbed it violently like I always did.
じゃあ行こう、ケイちゃん。
I began to walk after Mion, who headed for the hallway, when Rena silently stopped me.
みーちゃんもよろしくね。
あ、
みーちゃん、もう二度と帰ってこれないって確信してる。
Yeah, and I believe that too. I didn't know much about laws, but with as many deaths as she had been involved in, the chances of her escaping a heavy punishment seemed non-existent.
みーちゃんが短気を起こさないように見張ってね。
Mion might not surrender herself to justice, but instead chose to put an end to things herself. Rena had already thought that far ahead.
あ、そんなこと絶対にさせないから。
Rena rubbed at her tears, which had fallen without me noticing them.
じゃあ言ってあげて。
I nodded and followed Mion, who had disappeared out the front door. I like this track here. It's really nice. I could clearly hear Rena sobbing from the other side of the paper door.
どうしてみーちゃんは鬼なんか継がされちゃったんだろうね。それは仕方のないことだったんだろうね。でもあんまりにもかわいそうだよね。
Something hot burned down my cheeks. They were my tears. I fiercely wiped them away. This was the last of my time I could offer to Mion, so I absolutely didn't want to let her see me or see my tears during it. Mion was already waiting outside the front door. I wonder what's gonna happen here. I really wonder. Holy shit. There's a lot of story to this shit. It's ridiculous how far back everything can go. We got the achievement, sorry about that. Yeah, absolutely. I put my shoes on, tapped my shoes against the floor a few times, for good measure, and then left, and Mion timidly came over. Why is she turning all red at a time like this?
腕組んでもいいかな。
I don't know about that one. It was such a modest request.
別に構わないぞ。
Yeah, I'm very unsure about a lot of this here. She just admitted to murder, and now we're going to go ahead with her request, which is whatever. And now we're allowing her to be really close to us. With my permission, her face lit up with glee like a child being given a toy and took my arm.
私に腕を組まれたらなんだか緊張しちゃわない？
I'm nervous for other reasons.
例えば急に関節技を決められちゃうんじゃないかななんて思ったりとか。
姉妹揃って同じことを言うんだな。思わないよ。全然。
Back when nothing had gone wrong yet, during those nostalgic days of the bustling commotion at Angelmort, I counted back and was amazed. It had only been 1 week ago. I had been arm in arm with Shion then too. Linking arms with Mion like this really reminded me that they really were twins. How much strength they put into it, the sensation of their arms, their warmth and the blood flowing. I could feel their living sensations were all exactly the same.
シオンもケイちゃんのことが好きだったみたい。
You think?
そうなんだ。
If this were a regular conversation, I might have jumped back red in the face. Right now, though, no matter what I heard, my mind remained at peace.
ミオンとシオンは仲は良かったんだろ？
さあ、どうかな。
Yeah, I guess we won't know now.
ケイちゃんは自分の右手と左手は仲がいいと思う？
え？右手と左手？それは仲がいいとか悪いとか、そういう言い方で例えるものじゃないな。
そういう関係だから。仲がいいとか悪いとか、そういう尺度では測れない関係。
That didn't sound like it meant they got along really well.
例えば、利き腕というものがあるように、右手と左手には間違いなく優劣の違いがある。
Yeah, I've kind of experienced that recently.
もしも鍋つかみが片方しかなかったら、迷うことなく利き腕にするでしょ？そういう差はあったんじゃないかと思う。だからといって、左手がなくなったっていいなんて思う人は誰もいないはず。そんな、よくわからない関係だね。
多分、それは近くにいすぎるから見えなくなっているだけで、きっととても仲のいいことなんだと思う。俺は一人っ子だから、祭りの前日、ミオンとシオンが二人してじゃれ合っているのを、すごく羨ましいと思った。
ないものねだりじゃないの？双子なんて、昔は人をからかったりして、そこそこに面白かったけど、こうして互いがはっきりと異なる個性を持った今では、かえって邪魔なだけ。
Were they cursed, or were they self-conscious? The relationship was hard to understand for an outsider. Maybe that wasn't an issue someone like me should intrude on. Just staying silent and nodding gently was the best way to advance the conversation. Mion passed through the wide yard and invited me into the big desolate forest we'd seen on the way in. Such a big forest was part of their property, so I couldn't help but feel small.
でかい森だな。子供の頃はいい遊び場だったんじゃないのか？
Mion seemed to be silently reminiscing. I couldn't look into her mind, but she was probably thinking back to those fun days, and as when they played as sisters without any antagonism. Every time the wind blew, it caressed the treetops and the leaves, making a swishing, murmuring sound. Mion remained silent for a long time, thinking back on her younger sister, whom she had gotten rid of with her own hands. There was no need for me to get a word in. Just walking like this, arm in arm, was enough. Mion suddenly stopped and turned.
シオンは、まだ生きてる。
Ah.
本当か？
Mion took a hard look into my eyes and then nodded quietly.
誰よりもむごたらしい死に方をさせてやろうと、ずっと考えて閉じ込めておいたけど。
Wow.
今日まで、その方法はとうとう思いつかなかった。
Mion sounded as though she hated Shion, but also deep down she didn't completely detest her. So I took my other hand and rustled Mion's hair with it. Mion didn't only save me, she saved Shion too. Mion may have become a demon and led many people to their deaths, but she fought against it and was able to save 2 people. I ain't buying it. I'm really terrified here. As I petted Mion, she narrowed her eyes in an entranced smile and untangled her arm from mine. And then Mion quietly said,
来て。私の罪のすべてを見てほしいから。
I don't think I really want to see them.
でもそれはケイちゃんにとって、この上なく辛い光景かもしれない。
I could sense it. There I would probably find all the sacrifices up until now. Looking at them would mean accepting Rika-chan and Sadako's deaths, as well as accepting that my best friend had done it.
すでに起こり、終わってしまった事実だけれども、ケイちゃんは見ないことを選んでもいい。そうならば、ここで待っていて。私の手で、すべて終わらせるから。
I was taken aback by how ominous that sounded. I remember what Rena had told me. Mion might not surrender herself to justice, but choose to put an end to things herself. I couldn't leave her on her own. Besides, I agreed to her last request, didn't I? Even if it was hard for me to accept, I'll still do it. Even if I avoided looking, it was something that had already happened.
何を見たって。
I think we're really forgetting the issue here. She's the one behind this. She is capable of killing, and we're alone with her. Why are we just going along with it? Has Keiichi kind of just accepted the fact that if it happens, it happens because of what he's done? I guess that's a little understandable.
俺にとっての園崎美音は最高の親友だ。それは変わらない。一生。
The treetops softly swayed in the wind.
あんたもレナもどうしてこんな時ばかりかっこよくなるんだろうね。
Because this is anime. Normally I'd say something rude right back at her, evading the question, but today I didn't. I just answered with a smile. At last, Mion started walking. Into the thick forest, into the deepest part. After following a thin path that looked like an animal trail for a while, we finally came across a steep incline with a tunnel that reminded me of a coal mine or bomb shelter. We were surrounded by shallow hills. It had been created in a spot not visible from the outside. There were many silhouettes of crows in the trees here and there. The abnormal odor I'd been smelling for a while was doubtlessly escaping from inside this place.
引き返すなら今だよ。ケイちゃんの中の園崎ミオンがどんな人かは知らないけれど、中に入れば、そのミオンはきっと。
変わらない。何度だって言う。園崎美音は俺の最高の親友だ。
I clenched my fists. Inside there was probably a sight beyond anything I could imagine. If I let my guard down, I might end up vomiting. Even so, I'll endure it. I'll overcome this pain and this suffering. It will never change that Mion is my greatest friend.
私はただの鬼だから、もう人間の気持ちはわからないけれど、ミオンがあんたを好きになったの、よくわかる気がする。
他人事のように言うな。お前はミオンだ。鬼じゃない。血の通った人間で、俺の仲間なんだ。
Mion made a gesture like she was wiping tears from her eyes, and then placed a hand on the big door of the tunnel entrance. Oh boy, what are we going to see in Santa's sack? The lock on it was dauntingly strong-looking. It seemed to demand the appropriate resolution from whoever would enter, just like the ritual storehouse. When the double doors opened, a stifling, rotten air and a bunch of winged insects came rushing out. Oh fuck, I'd just run away at that point. I remembered accidentally killing a hermit crab a long time ago by leaving its tank out on the porch, and how intense the odor it left was. If that was the smell of a corpse, then that's certainly what this smelled like. Inside, it was pitch black, but Mion flicked a switch that turned on a light bulb, illuminating the interior. The path turned into a series of intricate wooden tunnels. We passed spaces that looked like they were for storage. We passed places that looked like someone had lived there. All this indicated that it had been used as a bomb shelter and stockpile during the war. It didn't give an impression of a dugout bomb shelter that had just been left there, though. There was a sense of dignity, as though there were a second Sonozaki house constructed underground. Despite being in pitch darkness below the ground, the voices of the cicadas were entering through an air hole somewhere, giving it a very mysterious feel. I was gonna ask, like, why are we still hearing this shit?
見たよね。あの拷問道具の山を。あれはすべて鬼ヶ淵村の厳しい戒律を守るために作られたものだった。戒律を破った者を見せしめにむごたらしく殺してみせる。
大昔の話だろ。
本来は見せしめの儀式。渡流しは御三家が取り仕切る儀式だったんだけど、君吉家と古出家の衰退、そして時代の変化によって行うことはとても難しくなった。
そりゃそうだな。この現代日本で犠牲者をのんびりと沢で殺せるなんて思えない。
だから園崎家は作ったの。現代でも綿流しの儀が行えるように。秘密の場所を。
Oh boy. Mion opened a large, strikingly different door, and inside, was none other than a modern storehouse for ritual implements. Oh yeah, this
いろいろ
is...
あるでしょ。
This is the same fucking background that we've seen before.
一部のものは実際に西宮殿から運び込まれたものなんだよ。
All of the things there had been rusty and covered in dust, but they didn't seem that real. But the things in here were different. Every one of them had been well maintained and kept in a state that they could be used right away. Blades gleamed and spikes were sharpened, also perhaps as a precaution for the splatter of blood. The walls and ceiling were covered in the kind of tiling you would see in bathrooms, and there was even a drain set amidst a slight slope in the floor. There were also a coiled rubber hose along the wall attached to a faucet, perhaps for cleaning up the splattered blood.
大昔の当主の書き物によるとね、血のしぶきってのは犠牲者に負担をかけない割にはインパクトがあるんだってさ。綿流しは見せしめの章だったから、私のご先祖様たちは様々な章を考案してたんだよ。
As she said that, Mion pointed deeper into the torture room, to a spot veiled in darkness. There was surprisingly a room floored with tatami mats, and in the corner was a pile of cushions.
鑑賞席なんだよ。綿流しは見せしめの章だから、客がいなきゃ意味がない。
That's a different kind of fucked up right there. I couldn't speak, and I couldn't think of anything to say. Except that if Mion revealing all this to me made her heart feel any lighter, then I was prepared to listen for as long as I needed to.
みんなここで、私が殺した。見てくれている観客はいなかったけど、私は綿流しを上手にやってみせた。いや、観客は一人だけいたかな。
Shion.
観客？
私
Oh.
私という鬼が、ミオンの執り行う綿流しをずっと見てたから。
Mion cackled in self-deprecation. It wasn't a nice-sounding laugh.
向こうが牢屋。
シオンはそこにいるのか？
She nodded slightly. Mion's Watanagashi had ended today. I needed to tell Shion that I was safe without a moment's delay. After all, she was probably trembling in fear at this very moment, worrying about when she would be killed. The whatever the fuck, door on the other side opened, revealing what must have been an incredibly expansive space based on the echo it made. Mion groped around in the darkness, and a handful of naked light bulbs came on here and there. As my eyes adjusted, more and more of the great cave showed itself in the faint light. The walls were bare rock surface, and it felt so savage that bomb shelter was the most apt term for it. There were small barred rooms built here and there, like holes made by insects biting their way, through a giant piece of fruit. It was immediately clear that each of them was a prison.
みんなはどこにいるんだ？リカちゃんやサトコは。
したい？
I grimaced at her having said it so outright.
ああ、そうだ。いつまでも暗い中じゃかわいそうだろ。
虫が湧くと嫌だったから、井戸に捨てちゃったよ。ごめん。
Well, fuck. So I can't even see their faces in death. Once again, my feelings of regret at having confessed everything to Rika-chan came surging forth. If Mion hadn't attached the word sorry to the end of what she said, I might have punched her. Calm down, Keiichi Maibara. You said it yourself, no matter what, Mion Sonozaki is your greatest friend.
ああ、言ったさ。
I needed to hear myself say it out loud. And then came the clattering of bars in one of the cells deeper in. When I noticed it, I looked up as well.
シオンか。
ケイちゃんなの。
I ran over to the cell. White hands were peeking out through the gaps in the bars. It really was her.
大丈夫か？シオン、怪我はしていないのか？
Shion's face twisted out of shape as she screamed. It was because Mion had appeared right behind me. Of course. Shion didn't know that everything was over yet.
落ち着け、シオン。もう全部終わったんだ。全部。
I spoke in as calm a voice as I could manage to try and soothe the agitated Shion. However, it didn't seem like it was getting through her screams.
シオン、ご機嫌はいかがだった？もういや。
早く私を殺してよ。憎いのは私なんでしょ。早く殺して殺して。
落ち着けってシオン。もう終わったんだよ。大丈夫なんだ。だから落ち着け。
Shion, who was screaming and rattling the iron bars back and forth, was truly in a frantic state. I gave a slight shrug of resignation, giving way to Mion. I had realized that if Mion was the one who locked her in here, and if Mion was the one who had scared Shion this much, then Mion was also the only one who could put an end to this. I have a bad fucking feeling, guys. Mion spoke from over my shoulder. Quietly. Oh, fuck.
安心しなよ。あんたは殺さない。まだまだ殺さないんだから。
She burst out into a bizarre laugh as if trying to make Shion's madness even worse. Shion broke out into a fierce shiver, brought on by that laugh, and rattled the iron bars as she wailed. Okay, so I want to bring up something. Not to say that I've been going out of my way looking for spoilers, but I did accidentally come across a video where I guess it was from maybe the older adaptations of this show, or of this series, excuse me. And I don't know, it was this scene, I'm pretty sure, because I remember seeing Shion locked up, and I was just so confused. And I thought to myself, well, it's not a spoiler if I don't know the context. And I mean, there's a bunch of, you know, creepy and scary shit that's gonna happen throughout, so even if I see some things here and there, I'm gonna forget about it because I don't know the context. Still, it's interesting that we're here now, and I'm being reminded of it. I don't know what's gonna happen, if it makes you guys feel any better.
そんなに死にたければ、この男を殺した後にゆっくりとひき肉にしてやるよ。古式にのっとり、獅子の先端から少しずつガリゴリと削ってミンチにしてやる。あの肉引き器はあんたのために取っておいてやるんだからね。それともそれでケイちゃんをミンチにしてみせた方があんたには面白いかな。
おい、いい加減にしろ。今さら怖がらせてどうするんだよ。
I tried to rebuke Mion for flinging terrible words at her this late in the game, but when I turned around... Uh-oh. Mion's mouth, so much so that it was hard to believe, had twisted into a shape even thinner than a crescent moon. It was a smile. Ooh, this music, mamma mia. I could sense it like a jolt of electricity. The person here wasn't my best friend Mion. It wasn't the Mion Sonozaki who had been tossed about by her heavy duty of succeeding the Sonozaki family either. Then, who was she? Are we really that stupid? I saw sparks flying before my eyes, like what happens when you get hit in the back of the head. The strength in my body drained instantly and my head suddenly became heavy. My knees buckled under the temptation and hit the floor. Then my whole body abruptly collapsed. My face should have hit the floor, but it was comfortable, as if I had fallen onto a down-filled futon. My consciousness reeled and then receded. It was the kind of sensation like if you took a nap in the car, but you were still half awake, and could listen to your parents talking as if they were far away. No, you wouldn't be listening. You would only be hearing it. It was happening so far away, and the conversation was completely unrelated to you, so you would have no interest in it. So whether Shion was yelling in my ears or Mion was in vulgar hysterics, I didn't think it annoying, nor did it interest me.
さーて、どんな方法で料理してやろうかね。そうだ、釘台なんかどうかな。あのちびがき二人組に試したかったんだけど、手が小さくて高速台にサイズが合わなかったからね。あれにしよう、あれにしよう。
Wow. Mion held me up from behind and dragged me across the floor. The soles of my feet scraped on it, and one of my shoes fell off. Shion's emotion is... Are you done? Shion's emotions exploded outward and she burst into bitter weeping. As if her crying had whetted Mion's interest, she had flung me down and returned to the prison cell again.
あんたも可愛い声で泣けるじゃない。あんたのわざとらしい空威張りには虫唾が走ってたんだけど。ミオン姉さん、お願いです。私をどういう風に殺しても構いませんから。どうか、ケイちゃんだけは見逃してあげてください。お願いです。
Shion had always acted as though she were a cut above her older sister. That Shion in such a miserable voice that I couldn't have imagined it during those peaceful times. Prostrated herself before the older sister she used to scoff at and pleaded forgiveness. Mion looked down with an expression of cool indifference, one that was plainly smiling with joy.
あんたの希望なんか聞くつもりは全然なかったんだけど、あんたがあまりにも面白い声で泣くものだから、なんだか聞いててやってもいいような気がしてきたかな。思えばあんたには姉らしいこと何にもしてやれなかったからね。はい、はい、ありがとうございます。ありがとうございます。じゃあさ、これまでのことを謝ってみせてよ。そうしたら私もこれまでのことをすっかり水に流してあげてもいいかな。そうしたらケイちゃんだけは見逃してあげなくもないよ。
Mion said that she might let me go, but she never said anything about letting Shion go. Before long, Shion got on her hands and knees behind the bars and began to speak weak words of apology. They were too faint for me to hear, but their intention got across. Despite having watched her with a magnificently jubilant expression, Mion kicked the bars and declared that she was unsatisfied.
そんなので私の積年の恨みつらみが償えると思ってるわけ？こんなんじゃダメだね。やっぱりケイちゃんからひき肉だ！いやー！待って姉様！もう一度だけ！
Mion stopped and waved her hand again in resignation. Not because she had grown impatient, but only because she was taking delight in abusing Shion.
ろくろく満足に謝れないあんただからね。特別にお姉が心に届く謝罪の仕方ってのを教えてあげるよ。一度しか教えないし、一言一句でも間違えたらアウト。いいね。はい、ありがとうございます。お姉さん。
God damn, this fucking hurts. Shion's miserable voice cried out, having become utterly hoarse. The sensation tearing through my chest returned a little at a time. I realized it was feelings of anger bubbling up. I was slowly regaining control of my body. However, I was only able to feel my skin and my blood flowing at the moment. I still couldn't voluntarily move my fingers.
ちゃんと覚えられたかな？ではやってごらん。誠心誠意、鉄頭鉄尾、心を込めてね。ちゃんとできたなら、あんただけを殺してあげるから。はい。ありがとうございます。ありがとうございます。
Something was strange. Something had become strange at some point. Until just a few moments ago, I was sure this had been Mion, but at some point, she had become someone else. The Mion I knew well would never do something so nasty like enjoy trampling all over someone's dignity like this.
さ、やってごらん。お姉ちゃんはちゃんと聞いててあげるから。その崎シオンは。
When I ran over to Shion's cell earlier, had the real thing been swapped out with a fake right behind me? Anyway, this couldn't possibly be Mion.
その崎シオンはミオン姉様の足元にも及ばない身の程をわきまえずお姉様に働いて数々の無礼をほらほらその調子少しは許してあげようかなって気になってきたよ。
Blood circulated through my whole body. My numb senses were returning. Just a little more. While Shion is still holding Mion's... No, that thing pretending to be Mion's attention. Hurry up!
生意気だったこれまでを反省し一緒ミオン姉様に忠誠を誓います。ですから
Not sure what's happening here. Mion's burst of laughter echoed throughout the big cave, growing to a terrifying level. That was not the laugh of someone who was alive in this world. It was none other than the laugh of a demon from the bowels of the earth. She laughed from her stomach until she grew tired of it, and stopped smiling suddenly as if snipping a wire, excuse me.
十分面白かったわ。あんたがそこまでプライドを捨てられるとは思わなかったから。十分に愉快。
Mion began to drag me again, after I'd finally got the feeling in my body back and pulled me towards the torture chamber.
姉様、殺すの。私だけ、その人、許してあげ。
安心しなって。ちゃんとあんたは殺してあげるよ。ケイちゃんの悲鳴をたっぷりと聞かせた後にね。
Oh yeah, we can stay alive, but we're gonna get fucking tortured. After dragging me to the torture chamber, she skillfully strapped me into the restraining table. Before I knew it, I was sprawled out and bound. She forced open my hands, with which I couldn't even make a satisfying fist, and tightly restrained each one of my fingers. She fastened only my hands and my fingers at that, tightly with hinges, and locked them in place. The door to the big cave with the jails had been left open, so I could hear Shion's cries of mortification the entire time. Oh. The feeling in my body returned, and the first action I took was to tell off that thing that looked like Mion.
ようやくお目覚め？私、さっき嘘をついたね。
Yeah, Keiichi is a fucking dumbass main character, I'm sorry to say.
シオンを一番むごたらしく殺してやろうと思って閉じ込めておいたけど、まだ思いつかないってやったやつ。あれが嘘。
Mion brought over something like a toolbox. From inside, she removed a large metal hammer, and next to that, she began to line up what looked like long, strangely shaped nails whose ends had been turned into hooks, like the kind you'd see on a harpoon. あの子に自分のせいで死ぬ大勢の人の悲鳴をたっぷりと聞かせて、体の芯まで染み通らせてから殺すの。なかなかセンスいいでしょ？
お前は誰だ？
は？ミオンでしょ？園崎ミオン。恐怖で頭が変になっちゃった？
違うな。お前が園崎ミオンであるはずがない。
Mion snorted and continued her preparations for the horrifying torture.
へえ。じゃあ、私がミオンじゃなかったら？
鬼だ。
え？
お前はミオンじゃない。さっきまで一緒だったミオンを返せ。
ケイちゃん、本当に頭は大丈夫？恐怖で頭がどうかなっちゃった？
触るな！この鬼め！返せ！ミオンを返せよ！俺の最高の友人だった！ミオンを返せ！
Mion stood there for a few moments with her jaw hanging open, not having expected me to say that. I myself knew that I was about to go insane. I knew it was nonsense to demand Mion's return when she was right in front of me. But, this person in front of me couldn't possibly have been Mion. There was no way I could accept that. So this is what I thought. Mion really had been possessed by a demon and was controlling Mion as if it were a separate personality. Mion was just a victim being manipulated by it. The evil one was really this thing. It all had to be the doing of this demon possessing her. Yeah, you know, I don't really think that personally. I think Mion has just always been this way because that's who she is. That's how she was raised in this fucked up family. When Mion heard that, she started to guffaw, laughing so hysterically that she started to cough and almost choked.
あんたって本当におめでたい人だね。園崎ミオンに殺されようとしているこの瞬間に目の前の私を否定するわけ？こんな面白い人が世の中にいるなんて初めて知ったわ。
笑いたければ好きなだけ笑え。だがお前が何を言おうと 俺はお前がミオンだなんて認めない。ミオンを返せ。退け、鬼め。
ケイちゃん、私を笑い涙で溺れ殺すつもり
No matter what, I wouldn't lose to that laughter of hers. I shouted loudly. I shouted from the bottom of my heart so that the real Mion trapped inside the Mion I saw in front of me would be able to hear. So when's the torture starting? That's what I want to know, you know?
こんな鬼畜生に負けるな。本当に強い。お前の力を見せてくれ。
The tears welled up and flooded down her face. Her hands were busy with the restraints, so she couldn't even wipe them. She just let them flow.
頼むよ、ミオン。どこでお前はこんな鬼に負けちまったんだ。お前はこんな弱いやつじゃないだろ。負けるな。戦え。戦え。
Mion, desperately enduring her laughter, pressed one of the long nails to the tip of my left pinky. In her left hand was the hammer. At her side were dozens more nails. I could tell what she was about to do, though I wish I couldn't. Even so, I couldn't afford to be scared. That was why I shouted.
お腹の筋肉がよじれて痛いよ。もういい？そろそろ始めるよ。いい声を出してね。これはケイちゃんへの拷問である以上にシオンへの拷問なんだからさ。
どうしてこんなことに。ミオン。
Then I wept. Only sobs came out. They weren't an acceptance of the torture about to be performed, however. They were tears of regret that Mion had lost to the demon. Yet a small change did occur in the Mion in front of me. Her heightened excitement was draining little by little. By the time I'd realized it, the one in front of me had returned to being Mion.
ケイちゃん、メイドの土産なんて気の利いたものじゃないけれど、どうしても知りたがっているようだから、一つだけ教えてあげるよ。
I didn't know if this was Mion, or just a display of momentary humanity that the demon had recovered.
私の中に鬼が宿ったのはずいぶん前。その鬼は私を蝕み、強行に駆り立てようとした。だけれど私はそれを理性で押さえつけた。鬼はそれで収まり、私はその鬼はどこかへ行ってしまったんだと思い込んでいた。でも本当は違った。私の中から出て行ったんじゃなく、私の中で眠っていただけだったの。
I noticed that there were tears forming in her eyes.
その鬼はある小さなことをきっかけにまた目覚めてしまった。それは何に原因があったと思う？
There was a sad and yet reproachful light in Mion's eyes.
わかる？
I don't know what gave the demon the chance to beat Mion.
鬼の私が教えるのも変だけれど、あんたが全てを狂わせてしまった元凶。
The tears welling up in her eyes spilled downward all of a sudden.
あの時、あんたがもらった人形を躊躇なく私に渡していたなら、
What, so
全ては狂い出さなかったかもしれない。
jealousy or some shit is what got her all fucked up? The doll I got. That doll that I got when we had our club meeting at the toy store that Sunday.
ケイちゃんには理解できないだろうね。理解できなくて当然。だけどね、そこからドミノ倒しみたいにパタパタパタといろんなものが倒れ始めて、初めの小さな一つを倒したあなたに自覚がないのは当然だろうけど、あなたが元凶なの。
そんな。俺が。
あんたがミオンを泣かさなかったら、私は起きなくて済んだのにね。これで十分？メイドの土産は。
Not really. A mistake that I'd made on that day was what messed everything up.
そんな。 嘘だろ。
Who knew that episode 1, 2, or 3, or whatever fucking number it was in the beginning of the playthrough, would have such an impact right here, right now?
自覚がないのは当然。でも、紛れもなく元凶なのはケイちゃん。あの時、あんたがさりげなく人形を私にあげていたら、多分こんなことにはならなかったと思う。
I wanted to say, like I just remembered something, as I recalled that day. Rena had told me about that, and I thought I had apologized. I didn't apologize to Mion, though. It had been Shion. In other words... Oh god. I hadn't said a single word of apology to Mion. Today I came to this house saying I had something to apologize for, but I never said a word of apology about this. Come to think of it, when I apologized for going into the ritual storehouse, Mion looked a little bit lonely, like she was disappointed. Why didn't I realize that until just now? Rena told me at the time. And now she herself... No. The demon was telling me. Is the only way for a dense idiot like me to be cured? To die altogether? I could no longer hold back the hot tears from pouring out of me. I simply just cried and reflected indifferently. On the taste of my tears, on the taste of regret.
じゃあそろそろいい？この拷問はね、左手の小指の先端の節に釘を打つ。順に親指まで打ったら、また小指に戻って、
Sorry.
今度は真ん中
I
の
think I
節に
skipped ahead
釘を
here.
打つ。
My bad. Oh wait, no, this is still her line. What the fuck?
この調子で15本の釘で左手を打ちつける。それが終わったら次は右手。それが終わったら次は、まだ意識があったら教えるね。指先ってたくさんの神経が集まってるから、ケイちゃんが想像するよりもはるかに痛いよ。両手30本を打ち終える前に失神しちゃう人もいるそうだから。
Mion pressed the tip of a nail to my left pinky finger. My wrists, my arms, and all my joints on my fingers were strapped in so tightly it hurt, and I couldn't even twitch.
他の人を拷問するときには何のためらいもなかったけど、なぜかあんたにはためらいがあるよ。
それでミオンの鬼が収まるなら。
If it will sate the demon, then do to me what you will.
あんた、本気で言ってるの？
俺が傷つけたミオンの痛みに比べれば、こんなの大したことないんだろ。気の済むようにするといい。その代わり、2つ約束しろ。
Mion was silent. She did, however, wait for me to speak.
俺を気が済むまで痛めつけたら、シオンは許してやれ。西宮殿に忍び込んだ罪には、それで十分見合う仕打ちをしたはずだ。
あんた、この後に及んで自分よりシオンの心配ができるわけ？
I mean, we're still worrying about fucking Mion. Like, come on, isn't it obvious that at this point we don't give a shit about ourselves?
もう一つは、気が済んだら、もうお前は消えろ。その体をミオンに返してやってくれ。それだけだ。
あんたって人には命乞いをするとかそういう考えは思い浮かばないの？
約束2つじゃなくて3つにしていいか。3つ目は俺を殺すなにしてくれ。
最初に2つって言ったでしょ。だからもうダメ。
そいつは残念。
In such an abnormal situation, Mion and I laughed quietly together, as if sharing in a stupid joke.
多分私は約束を守らないよ。
Then what's the point?
鬼だから。
その時は仕方がないさ。
I recalled tightening my hands into fists when enduring the pain at the dentist's office. Right now, though, they were opened all the way to my fingertips, so I couldn't even grip them. So instead, I tightened my toes. Well, time to get tortured. Alright, do it. I've prepared myself already. So do it. You waiting like this to hammer the nails in is scarier. It's going to diminish my readiness after all. Mion put down the hammer and gently stroked my cheek. What?
ケイちゃん、今の3つ目の願いだけは。
My third wish? To save me? She'll agree to it?
1つ目の願い、シオンを救うこと。これはもう無理。シオンは鬼が殺してしまう。それはもう決められたことだから止められない。だから諦めて。
Her delicate fingers slid from my cheek to my chin.
そして2つ目の願い、この体をミオンに返すこと。これももう無理。今日を境にミオンが戻ってくることはもうない。今日以降、もし私の姿があったとしても、それは姿だけ。私の姿をした鬼だから。
そんなことはない。ミオンはミオンだ。もう戻ってこないなんて悲しいことを言うな。
聞こえる？あの音。
Mion gently closed her eyes and listened. I definitely heard it as well. Slam. Slam. It was a dull noise that repeated at fixed intervals. A low noise accompanied by vibrations. A lot of people were ramming the iron doors to this underground ritual storehouse.
帰りが遅いから、レナが大石を呼んだんでしょ。あのぼやーっとした感じの子が、こんなに頭が回るのだけは計算外だったな。
それについては同感だよ。
Mion grinned like she had been outwitted, and then took something that looked like an electric razor out of her pocket. When she pressed the switch, pale blue sparks flew out of a snapping noise, or with a snapping noise.
見たことないでしょ？本物のスタンガンだよ。違法品なんで、かなり出力が上げられるようになってるけどね。
さっき、俺に食らわせたのはそれか。子供のおもちゃには向かねえぞ。
そうだね。
She seemed to want to use the stun gun on me. Unable to move, I felt her press the cool lump of metal to my neck. Slam. I heard a roar as though they'd broken down the first large door. The halls were a bit complex, but aside from the door to this very torture chamber, there was nothing in their way.
殺さないけど、しばらくケイちゃんにはお休みしててもらうね。すぐに大石が来てくれるから、ちょっとの我慢。
Feeling the same shock as before, gritting my teeth wasn't going to help much, but I clenched them tightly anyway. However, just as she did when she was about to hammer the nails in, she hesitated a little. I cracked open my tightly closed eyelids.
ごめんね、ミオンを怪我して。
ここに入る前に約束した。何があっても、俺の中のミオンは変わらない。
でも忘れて。今日以降、もしも私を見かけても、それは、私の屍に取り付いた鬼なんだから。
What are you talking about? Just as I tried to say that, a much stronger light than before shined, and like a television being switched off, my consciousness went black. Nice. I guess we got hit with the stun gun. I didn't think that's what we got hit with the first time, to be completely honest. Oh shit, we got an achievement. Twisted Sisters. Who the fuck is that in the picture? I know you guys can't see it because it's the Steam overlay showing me the achievement unlock, but it was an image of somebody I'd never seen before. June 1983. A string of disappearances occurred in Hinamizawa village, Shishibune City, whatever prefecture. The suspect is Mion Sonozaki, somewhere in her teens. She is suspected to have kidnapped 5 Hinamizawa residents between June 19th and June 21st. Oryo Sonozaki, Shion Sonozaki, Kichiyoro Kimiyoshi, Rika Furude, and Sadako Hyojo. Imprisoned them and killed them. So wait, she actually killed her grandmother. Why did I not think of that? Did that go over my head at some point? Preliminary investigations on the incident were delayed at the time due to insufficient evidence, but it was resolved coincidentally and shockingly. On the morning of the 23rd, a vehicle patrolling the Sonozaki property heard screams from inside and rushed in as an emergency measure. They secured the suspect's missing younger sister, Shion Sonozaki, and her 2 missing classmates, Keiichi Maibara and Rena Ryugu. The suspect fled the scene. What? Are you serious? Deep in the detached basement on the Sonozaki property, which is believed to have been used to kill those who disappeared, we discovered hair, flakes of skin, blood, etc. of the other four missing persons. We already know them. We concluded that the missing persons were tortured in the torture chamber. However, the remains have still not been found. At one of her imprisoned classmates' advice, we continued searching the detached basement of the Sonozaki property, which was where they were imprisoned, believing that they were there. However, we have still not located them or the suspect's escape route. In addition, investigations are continuing as to her participation in the serial freak death incidents of recent years, thinking it would give some clue. But no evidence that Mion Sonozaki was involved, either directly or indirectly, has been found. There are still many unclear points as to the motive behind the incident, and as those of the Sonozaki family and the residents of Hinamizawa have been extremely uncooperative in assisting us, we expect to require a long time to clarify them. The opinion of a local officer knowledgeable about the region is that this may have been a lynching, an internal form of punishing sacrilegious acts carried out against the beliefs of Hinamizawa village. It is clear that these incidents are particularly rooted in this region, and the prefectural police department has ordered a cautious investigation. We anticipated gaining valuable clues from the missing person believed to have been in prison for the longest time, Shion Sonozaki, the suspect's younger sister, but her mind was stricken by the grave after effects of the incident, and she has not been in a state of mind to properly answer any questions about what she knows. The psychiatrist concluded that she is in a temporary state of shock, but it doesn't seem hopeful that she will recover today either. I completely understand that. Only a few days passed since that time. After that, I was rescued by Ushi-san and his subordinates whom Rena had called in. Aside from my entirely blank state of mind, I had no external injuries. The most I had was the small burn mark from where the stun gun hit me. As I was having a checkup in the hospital, Ushi-san asked me all sorts of things, but I don't remember what he asked or how I answered them. From what I heard, surprisingly, Mion still hadn't been captured. There were apparently a great many hallways and smaller rooms extending out from the depths of the prison. It wouldn't be strange if she had fled to one of those and hidden herself. The one fortunate aspect amidst all the misfortune was that Shion had been safely secured by the police. When I last saw Mion, she seemed like she was going to take me with her and then kill me. She probably didn't have enough time to, though, since Ushi-san came running in faster than she predicted. That was the only really fortunate thing to have happened. Of course, the rescued Shion, despite having no external wounds, now had a big deep wound in her heart, and her mind. She was in a severe state of confusion when they rescued her, and apparently she bit the police officers trying to resist. From what he heard, she was seeing Mion in everyone she saw, hated not only the hospital, but even her own home, and had shut herself up somewhere in Shishibone, hiding her location. Additionally, in fear that Mion would come for her, she was moving from place to place every day, and even her parents weren't sure where she actually was. That's fucking terrible. Wherever she was living, even now, Shion was spending her days in fear of Mion's shadow. The police were investigating the Sonozaki's underground storehouse at this moment, since they couldn't find the remains of the other sacrifices. Hadn't Mion thrown the corpses into a well? I had a feeling I'd said that to him. That meant a hidden tunnel vertical like a well was somewhere in those underground passages. The secret underground without any maps or architectural drawings, which had swallowed up the remains of Rika-chan, Sadako, and everyone else, was still unwilling to speak the truth. I was brought back to that basement again, too, for an on-the-site inspection or something, but I didn't remember being of any help. I never wanted to go back there again. 4 days afterward, the Sonozakis living in Okonomiya, in other words, Mion and Shion's parents, the big-name Yakuza, would come to our house to apologize, bringing many of their followers with them. However, much my parents refused it, they piled up many 100,000 yen bills, calling it consolation money every day. The amount of money grew each day, and after it had passed 2 million yen, they were then given an envelope containing a letter. I don't know what was written in the letter. My parents talked about it by themselves for 2 whole nights and decided to move away. Wow. I mean, 2 million yen, that's a lot of money.
引っ越しちゃうんだね。いつ？
来月の終わり。Hinamizawaには結局、半年も居つかなかったことになるな。
寂しくなるね。
Yeah, she's literally all alone now. She has no close friends. The entire club is gone. What the fuck?
私一人しか残らない。
Rena smiled sadly. If I had just said, yeah, I thought it would make her even more lonely. So I changed the subject.
こう考えることがあるんだ。
That's how I broached it. Mion hadn't actually fled, but had been demoned away in the truest sense of the term. Excuse me, where she went after she disappeared, that we didn't know. What was there, where she had disappeared to, I had hoped that there was a hobby shop dealing in imports, the kind Mion liked. In that place, she would definitely be free from the burdensome fetters of her family, and live not as Mion Sonozaki, but just as Mion, and enjoy herself. Maybe she's already met up with Sadako and Rika-chan. They must also have been waiting for the day Rena and I would join them, spending all their time doing club activities as lively as they always were. When I told Rena that, she smiled and nodded at me. Well, that's sad. The incidents the Sonozaki family had been trying so hard to hide, too, were exposed to the magazines from this single tiny seam. The serial incidents of recent years were all pulled up like a long vine in the ground, one by one, and for many days news of it had brought up on talk and variety shows. The shows, which were comedic and silly, never once tried to touch upon the grim heavy history that Mion had been bearing. It made me mad to see them bringing this stuff up in jest, but there was nothing I could do about it now. How big an impression would these short few weeks I spent in Hinamizawa have on my life? During these few weeks, I met my best friends, and had the best experiences of my life. I would probably never forget it for as long as I lived. Yeah, neither would I. This was the fucking weirdest experience a young boy could ever go through. As for the distorted image of Mion that the media created, after the masses got tired of treating her like a plaything, they would ball her up, throw her in the trash, and then she would fade from their memories. As somebody, as one of the few people who knew the real Mion, I must always make sure I remember her. Beyond any doubt, they will surely become my offering to her. The sky reached so far up, and towering, I'm not even going to try to say that, clouds floated through it. The real summer was just before our eyes. Are we actually going to survive in this one? That's what I'm wondering. Even now, whenever 10 p.m. came around, I would expect a phone call from Shion, or Mion rather. Now that everything was over, of course, she would never call me. But it was precisely because she wouldn't call me that I was scared of who would call me this time. Plus, Mion still hadn't been caught. I couldn't say for sure that everything was completely over. On the other side of that fear, though, were my prayers that Mion was safe. When I thought like that, I was able to sleep, even with such terrifying thoughts. The lights were off. Before her attacking when the lights were off was something that scared me. However, that feeling changed to regret within 2 days. The moonlight filtering through the gap in the curtains shone onto the desk and illuminated a doll. That's right, the doll that I should have given to Mion that day. She said it was an import from England or something, and was all the rage, didn't she? From what Shion said, the most popular among them were the ones wearing the fluffy dress. After being released from the incident, the first place I went to was that toy store. Everything was apparently sold out besides the things on the storefront displays. I was refused once when they said they wouldn't sell the display products, but when they realized I was Survivor A from that incident, they immediately consented. Of course, even if I bought it, I might never have the chance to give it to her again. Even knowing that, I waited for the opportunity to give it to her. I waited like this for the opportunity with it on the desk so I could give it to her at any time. And it never happened, I'm assuming. Plunk. There was a weird noise. It was a noise I wasn't used to hearing. It was too big to be raindrops, and I was completely and it was completely different from the sound lost bugs made when they ram into fluorescent lights. I figured I must have misheard and nestled back to my futon. And there's the noise again. I wasn't hearing things. I definitely heard it. Where was it coming from? I got up and turned on the light. I feel like we're gonna get spooked here. If there was a second, there would be a third. From where, though? I listened carefully. Someone's throwing a fucking rock at our window. Yeah. Some sort of pebbles were colliding with my window. When I realized they weren't being blown there by the wind, but rather being thrown by a person, I gave a start. I looked at the clock, and it was 2 a.m. Who would it be at a time like this? I quietly peek out front through the gap in the curtains. Who is going to be up at 3 a.m. to order fast food, am I right? SpongeBob reference. In the light of the gate, despite it being so late, I saw someone. But who was it? They picked up a piece of gravel and threw it at this window. It hit the window and made a plonking noise. Who was it? Was it Shion? Mion? One of them? I caught my breath in surprise. If my eyes weren't deceiving me, that person was Mion. I threw open the window and looked at the figure again. My eyes certainly weren't deceiving me. It was Mion. It was Mion. She was alive. Mion pressed her index finger to her lips and made a shh motion so I wouldn't shout. If she hadn't, well, I was nearly about to cry out. Mion was in a very delicate position right now. Even if it was the middle of the night, I shouldn't call out her name. I waved to her, gesturing I'd be right over, flung on my coat atop my pajamas, and flew out the door. What is wrong with us? We're going to die. We got out of a near-death experience, and we're now going over to the person who was going to torture us and kill Shion, and perhaps us at one point. And fuck me, right? I quickly hit the brakes just before going down the stairs. Although happiness was sprouting within me, I had the sad feeling that this would be our final parting. Get the doll. Yeah, there we go. If there was a god, I don't think I would have ever thanked him as much as today. Even if it would be the last time we ever saw each other, I was so grateful for this one chance to give it to her. I slipped into my sandals, unlocked the door, unhooked the chain, and leaped out of the house.
Mio!
お久しぶり。どう？元気にしてた？
It was like how we used to meet every morning. Mion waved to me and responded like she always did. It was doubtlessly Mion. It was the real Mion.
お前、こんなところをうろついてて、大丈夫なのか？
本当はいけないよ。
She certainly wasn't acting like she knew the police were following her. It was almost like she was patient, she was a patient who had gotten tired of staying in the hospital and snuck out. Her speech was relaxed enough to make me think that I couldn't help but be surprised. That relaxation, I thought, was more like Mion, and I was happy for it.
それより、どうしたんだよ、こんな時間に。
最後にお話ししたかったから。
That was when I noticed them. On Mion's forehead were big droplets of sweat. Her expression, too, which I thought to be a satisfied smile, was upon closer inspection trembling slightly, and I realized that she was forcing it.
私ね。もう、ここにはいられない。
A pain note was beginning to enter her words as well, as if just smiling was a feat for her.
大丈夫か？どこか具合でも。
今日まで頑張ってきたけど自分でもわかるの。
The demon.
もうダメ。もう限界。私のお迎えはもうすぐ後ろまで来てる。
Mion's smile crumbled and started to stiffen. Did she push herself this much to come all the way? Or all this way for me? Her laughter cut off and changed into rough breathing. Yeah, I'm hearing that. I reached out to rub her back and she knocked me away.
大丈夫かよ。もう無理するな。そうだ。俺、ミオンに。
To give you, Mion. This doll. And we're gonna die, right? I had wanted to do this one last thing because I knew how little time you had left. But this last thing, Uh-oh. Are we dying? Yeah, I think we are. My stomach is burning. Mion took a meat cleaver, or a meat cleaver-like knife, and stabbed me, and pushed it in tight and took it and twisted. Oh, damn it. Mion. Hey, what? We are fucking stupid, by the way. It hurts. I cowered on the ground. My stomach was so hot it was almost spewing fire. Mion watched and then took a few steps back and cackled. Oh, that sounds like she got to Shion at some point. That's not good. The last words Mion left with me that day came back to me.
今日を境にミオンが戻ってくることはもうない。
Yeah, I think Keiichi is just stupid and forgetful. From today on, even if my body is here, a body is all that it will be. By then, the demon will have taken it over. The demon. The demon. The demon. Yeah. This can't... I thought we had finally been able to meet. This can't... Mion. In a pool of blood, my own design, or of my own design, is the doll I bought for Mion, dyed in red, so red. Mion. The good fortune of having been allowed to meet Mion once more, and the misfortune of that meeting being torn apart before my eyes. Should I be grateful or curse it? My emotions were neither of those, as my consciousness sunk deep into a black swamp. The doll I bought for Mion, the blood had ruined it. No matter how I scrubbed it and scrubbed, it had needlessly been ruined. Ruined. The sad moon was so white, it looked frozen. Well, I guess we can't escape death in any of these chapters. June 28th, 1983. A violent incident occurred in Hinamizawa village, Shishibone City, whatever prefecture. The victim was Keiichi Maibara, also a victim of the previous string of disappearances. At around 2 a.m., he was stabbed in the stomach with a bladed object by the suspect of the last case, Mion Sonozaki, and was gravely wounded. He was discovered when his parents woke up and was then transported to the clinic. He escaped death. What the fuck? Are you serious? The criminal fled the scene. Great. She's still out there. On the same day, at approximately the same time, a fall accident occurred in the apartment complex in Shishibone City, whatever prefecture. The victim was Shion Sonozaki, also a victim of the previous string of disappearances, so she did not survive. Late on the same night, neighbors overheard her having a big fight with someone and informed the manager. The manager used a master key to enter the room and discovered that the victim had fallen from the 8th floor balcony to her death. The room had been torn apart and appeared to show traces of a fight. One neighbor had frequently visited the Sonozaki house for a long time, and testified that he heard what sounded like the two sisters having a fight, trading insults back and forth. We believe this was related to the injury case that occurred the same day in Hinamizawa village, perpetrated by said incident suspect, and did a thorough search of the room, but we could not find any traces that would imply that anyone but the victim was present. The victim fell straight down into the foliage of a parking strip. Her neck broke and she died immediately. Her clothing was disheveled and had markings that would imply a scuffle. We also believe, however, that it could have been an insanity-induced suicide attempt based on the particular mental state of the victim after the incident. We are conducting a thorough examination on both fronts, suicide and homicide. I mean, we know it's a homicide, obviously. It had to be. You know, given everything else that's presented, everything that we witnessed.
本当に5分だけですからね。 刺激しないようにしてください。心得ていますよ。
Oh, hello, Ueshi-san. Ka-clack. The door opened, and as I expected, Ueshi-san came in.
どうも前原さん。
Oh, I'm glad you can have a big ol' smile on your face after, we got stabbed.
ご無沙汰しておりますね。その後、お加減はいかがですか？
医者が言うには術後の回復は順調だそうですが、あんたの顔を見たらまた傷が悪くなりそうです。
Damn.
こりゃ手厳しい。
Oh, but not as much as we were wounded. As Ueshi-san gave a laugh that smelled of sweat, he handed Mom a bag of assorted candles he must have purchased from the souvenir corner on the first floor of the hospital.
すみません、お母さん。ほんのしばらく圭一君とお話しする時間をいただいてもよろしいですか？
Mom clearly wasn't pleased at the thought of a police officer talking to her son without her there. However, I insisted.
母さん、悪いけど、ほんのちょっとだけ、5分でいいから。
Though grudgingly, Mom left the room. When she closed the door, Ueshi-san grinned widely and looked around the room.
個室なんていい身分ですね。うちのばあさまなんかいっつも相部屋ですよ。そりゃもう賑やかなことで、ああいうところじゃ病気の重さが一つのステータスになるらしいんですよ。より重病な患者ほど偉いというか、威張っているというか。
大石さん、5分ですよ。できればこれが本当に最後の5分にしてほしいものです。俺はもうHinamizawaとは関係ないし、ここももうHinamizawaじゃない。
沖宮には総合病院はありませんからね。椅子よろしいですかな。ゆっくらしゅっと。
This was a large university hospital in Shishibone City. It was splendidly urban, entirely different from the likes of Hinamizawa and Okonomiya. It was hard to believe Hinamizawa was part of the same city.
転院はいつ頃になりそうですか？
さあ、俺的にはいつでも OK なんですけどね。
Our moving plans were delayed a little because of my serious injury. My parents had already left the house in Hinamizawa, though, and were living in our new one. They planned to have me transfer hospitals to be closer to the new house once I'd recovered enough to be taken there.
転院先にまで来ないでくださいよ。本当に具合が悪くなりますからね。
いや、すっかり嫌われちゃいました。仕事柄とはいえ心苦しいですよ。なので今日はこれまでの罪滅ぼしに素敵なお土産をいろいろお持ちしましたので。
別にクッキーの詰め合わせなんか持ってこなくても。
それがね、実は中身はクッキーじゃないんですよ。ほら。
Ueshi-san pulls open the can of cookies and... Ow, I'm stretching my scar.
前原さんの好みがわからなかったので、いろいろと持ってきましたよ。ほら、よりどりみどり、野原は黄緑ってなもんです。
Oh boy.
さあさあ、好きなだけ持っていっちゃってください。
こんな本なんか持ってこないでください。持って帰って。いってて。
Yeah, don't worry. The internet will become a thing very soon, and we'll be okay.
健全な若者がこんなところにずっと閉じ込められてたら、こんなところにいると看護師フェチにしかなりませんよ。世の中には看護師さん以外にも素晴らしいものがいっぱいあるんですからね。今から専門を決めないで幅広くオールラウンドに行かなくっちゃ。
We're really not getting anywhere in this conversation, are we? I gave Ueshi-san's vulgar laughter a pained grin. Somehow or other, I understood. The fact that Ueshi-san was bringing it up like this meant that he must have had something important to talk about.
シオンさんの件は本当にお気の毒でした。
The night I was stabbed by Mion, Shion fell from her balcony and died. They said the police were investigating all possibilities, accident, suicide, and homicide, but it could only have been Mion's doing. Mion found out where Shion was hiding and pushed her down to her death. Nothing else was conceivable.
事故のわけない。ミオンです。絶対に。
鑑識の連中は自殺だとしか思えないなんて言ってるんですが、私も前原さんと同じ意見です。
I mean, Mion even told us to our face that she killed everybody.
シオンさんを突き落とし、さらにあなたを刺した。一晩のうちにね。
ミオンはまだ見つからないんですか？
そうそう。それを今日はお伝えしたくて来たんですよ。はい。実は見つかったんです。
Learning that felt rather strange to me. I was partly relieved that the incident was truly over, and I was partly sorry that my best friend had finally been caught. I felt many other things, too. My heart was a maze of emotions.
それだけじゃない。園崎家の例の地下、隠し井戸も見つかったんですよ。前原さんがおっしゃられてた通り、失踪者全員の遺体をその底で発見しました。
そうですか。
That sliver of hope, that possibility I'd believed in, that Rika-chan and Sotoko were alive, just from the fact their remains hadn't been found, gone.
あの地下に実に巧妙に隠されてましてね。いやいや、まさに死角中の死角でした。井戸状に掘られた垂直トンネルでして、はしごが設けてあって、下へずーっと行ったところに、今度は横へ抜けるトンネルが作られていました。そこを数百メートルも張って進むと、なんと山中の古井戸に抜けられましたね。
過去の園崎家の当主が作らせた秘密の逃げ道だったんでしょうね。
でしょうな。明治以降に作ったものでしょうが、いやいや、よくもあんなものを作ったもんです。
みんなの遺体はその底に？
はい。逃げ道の通路よりもさらに下にコールタール状の泥水が溜まってまして、
Coal tar?
そこに無造作に投げ込まれていました。相当の高さから落としたわけですから、遺体はどっぷりと埋まってしまってましてね。
ああ。
遺体の引き上げにはだいぶ苦労させられました。
全員見つかりましたか？
I hoped that they at least wouldn't find Rika-chan or Sotoko. And that's what I wished for when I asked, but my shallow hope was crushed in the blink of an eye.
はい。全員。それどころか、死後10年以上経過したと思われる人骨も見つかりました。
Jesus.
最低でも3人分はあると思われます。Hinamizawaの歴史の暗部というわけでしょうな。泥を全部吸い出したら、一体何人分の骨が出てくるやら。怖い話です。
That weight had been pushing down on Mion's shoulders the whole time. Mion.
今、鹿骨市内の過去数十年の失踪者を洗い直しているところです。諦められてた失踪事件も、これを機に全部解決するんじゃないか。な。
My bad. After a deep silence, he breathed a heavy sigh. Ushi-san went for his cigarettes to pass the time, but realized this was a non-smoking area, so he gave up and put them back in his shirt pocket. And that's what we call an addiction.
そうそう。これは寄り道なんですが、古出里香さん、ご存知ですよね。
もちろん、仲間ですから。
彼女、例えば糖尿病でインスリンの注射を常用していたとか、そんな話はありました？
No, this is the first time diabetes has ever been brought up in this series. Rika-chan has diabetes. I didn't know what he was talking about.
実は彼女のスカートのポッケからですね、注射器が見つかりまして。
Oh.
破損していたので薬物は特定できなかったのですが、少々不似合いだったので興味を持ちまして。本当にご存知ありません？
I didn't know anything about Rika-chan carrying syringes around with her.
園崎家は本業の方、薬剤屋さんのことです。で、覚醒剤を扱ってるとの噂がありましてね、その可能性もあるかなんて思ってたのですが。
Yeah, there's still a lot of questions left here. sure, we might be getting an idea as to, how these people died or where people that quote-unquote disappeared went to, the people that were sacrificed. They weren't, drowned in a swamp. They were thrown down a goddamn well after being tortured. But, well, for these cases at least. But those syringes, we've seen this in Chapter 1. I think we even got shot with one, to be completely honest. It's been a while, though. I don't remember. That is what I don't understand. There seems to be a completely questionable and confusing side to the villagers here that we still have no fucking idea about. And it just gets me more excited.
リカちゃんが覚醒剤の常用者だっていうのか？
いえいえ、そうは申してませんよ。ただ、お醤油をもらいに行くついでに注射器を持っていくってのは、どう考えても変ですからね。
She knew what was going to happen then. She was going to try and fight back. I have no idea what any of this means. My eyes are spinning. I feel sick.
大丈夫ですか？看護師さんを呼びましょうか？
大丈夫ですから、話の続きを。
まあ、注射器の話はそれだけです。それだけが個人的に気になったもので。
Rika-chan.
リカさん、村のマスコットみたいなところがありましたからね。今、村は騒然としてるみたいですよ。盲信してた年寄り方と、殺してしまった園崎家とで。実効支配していた御三家もほぼ全滅状態。こんなタイミングでまたダムの話が出てきたりしたら、今度こそ間違いなく敗損でしょうな。
もう俺、Hinamizawaとは関係ありませんから。
I actually was. I just said it because the thought about Hinamizawa being abandoned was unpleasant, and I wanted to end the conversation quickly. There was a knock at the door. It opened slightly and my mom asked if we were still talking.
ありゃ、無駄話が過ぎましたか。参ったな。
I looked at the clock. 5 minutes were long past. He told my mother that there was something he really wanted to ask, and if she could wait a little bit longer.
そう？手短にね。
There wasn't any getting around the fact that she was thinking about what a police officer could be talking to her son about.
日を改めた方が良さそうですね。
大石さん、ミオンは今、どうしてるんです？
I wanted to just hear the answer and then get rid of him.
それを話す前に、前原さんに一個だけ、本当に正直に答えてもらいたいことがあります。
何ですか？
本当に真面目に答えてくださいよ。これ、いい加減なこと言っちゃうと、場合によっては、捜査か乱と見られて、告発される場合もありますからね。
Ushi-san kept threatening me until the end. What the hell did he want?
前原さん、シオンさんを突き落とした犯人は誰だと思います？
Mion?
ミオンしか考えられないじゃないですか。
では、あなたを刺したの誰です？
Mion.
何度も言わせないでください。ミオンですよ。園崎ミオン。
Ushi-san smiled bitterly, then dabbed at his forehead with a handkerchief to wipe his sweat. He should have expected that answer, and yet it looked as though he wasn't satisfied with it.
シオンを突き落として、俺を刺して、ミオンの犯行だって、さっき大石さんも認めたじゃないですか。
シオン殺しの犯人がミオンだという根拠は、隣人の男の証言によるものなんです。この隣人ってのは、実は暴力団組員、つまりシオンさんのボディーガードだったんですよ。
Well, he fucking failed his job.
このうちのリーダー格が古参で、園崎姉妹が幼いうちから親身になってた男なんだそうで。
The man said this. The noise he heard from next door was just like the sound of a fight between the sisters that he was used to hearing when they still lived together. And no, there was no doubt about it. He said he heard Mion and Shion insulting each other and heard them struggling. At first, though, he thought it was a hallucination she was having, brought on by her dementia. You see, he thought that because that sort of ruckus had been occurring every night. However, that night had been longer than the rest, and he claimed he went to her room to give her a sedative. The noise died down while he got the manager to give him the key. He'd already decided he'd at least check up on her, and after she wasn't answering his calls, they took the plunge and unlocked the door. Then they saw that the room was a mess. Since Shion had been pushed over the balcony, they decided it'd have to have been Mion. And that's how it happened. But how did she get into the room? And then how did she get out?
しかもこのマンション、組の関係で住人がほとんどいないんです。ですから、この騒ぎを聞いてたのも彼らだけ。重ねて言えば、園崎ミオンを目撃した者は誰一人いないんです。
見なくったって、そんなの、ミオンの犯行だってわかるじゃないですか。
まあまあ。
Well, we can only say that based on what Mion told us. It would definitely seem to be Mion who committed the other crime as well. But when you do think about it, there really is no evidence.
だから、つまりですね、あなただけがあの晩、確かに園崎ミオンを目撃した。もう一人の目撃者のシオンさんは生きておられませんからね。
大石さんが何を言いたいのかよくわからないんですけど。
At that point, Ueshi-san paused. The fact that this was a no-smoking area completely slipped his mind, and he took out his pack of cigarettes again. Kerk-shack, he lit one with his lighter, and exhaled a long stream of tobacco smoke.
あなた、本当に園崎ミオンに刺されたんですか?
I should have thought that this is where this was heading.
はい、間違いなく。
The smoke Ueshi-san breathed out floated away, like a thundercloud swept away by the wind.
大石さん、ここ禁煙です。看護師さんに怒られますよ。
実は、園崎ミオンも、井戸の底から見つかったんですよ。
What?
転落死です。あの井戸の隠し通路から逃げ出そうとしてはしごを降りる途中に足を踏み外し、そこまで転落し、首の骨を折って死亡したとみられます。はい、シオンさんと同じにね、首の骨を折って。あの日、前原さんを気絶させた後、園崎ミオンは隠し井戸から外へ逃れようとして足を踏み外して死んだのです。まるでそこに突き落とした他の犠牲者の死体に呼び寄せられるようにね。
それじゃあおかしいじゃないですか。
It really doesn't.
検視の結果、間違いなくあの日に死亡したものと確認されました。
Then who the fuck did we see?
あなたとシオンさんを襲ってからあそこに戻ったんじゃない。あの日にすでに死んでいたんです。
My jaw was on the floor. There was absolutely no way that could be. Mion was the one that stabbed me. It had to have been her. There wouldn't have been anyone else to do it.
じゃあ、誰が俺とシオンを襲ったんですか？誰が？
あなたを襲った園崎ミオンなのに園崎ミオンじゃない何者かですよ。
So someone who was pretending to be her. My mind had become a complete mess, and I was starting to lose my ability to think straight.
高野美代さんの死覚えてますか？
高野さん？はい、確か遠くの山の中で焼け死んだって聞いたような。
あれは考察された後に焼かれたことが分かってます。検視したのは県警さんなんですけどね、これがちょっとおかしいんですよ。初期の検視結果では死後24時間経過って出ちゃったんです。辻褄が合わないってことで大慌てで当日死亡って改ざんしたらしいんですが。
Despite me being an absolute wreck over what was going on with Mion, he was telling me there was even more on top of that? I didn't understand the complex things Ueshi-san was telling me.
この死後24時間って検視結果、 うちの鑑識のじじいが言うにはですね、かなり信頼できるものらしいんです。つまりどういうことか。これは何度も聞いた質問になりますが、あなた綿流しの晩高野美代さんに会ってますよね。
合ってます。
その前日、お祭りの準備の日にも会ってますよね。私もその時お会いしてますし。
ええ、合ってますよ。
死後24時間ってことは、お祭りの前日の晩にはもう死んでるってことになるんですよ。
So could it have been a form of possession?
そんなはず。
お祭りの準備の時には生きていた。でもあなたたちと一緒に西宮殿に忍び込んだ時、高野さんはもうお亡くなりになっていたのです。
The origin of all that happened. The beginning of everything. Our intrusion in the ritual storehouse, which I had come to regret countless times. The one who tempted me, Takano-san. When she invited us into the storehouse, she was already no longer of this world. How does that work?
今回の事件、死人が歩き回りすぎなんですよ。
Oh, I ain't laughing, Oishi-san. An incident caused by a dead person and ended by a dead person.
園崎美音の死亡時間を事件当日ではなく、あなたを刺した直後に改ざんせよとの圧力も来てるみたいです。この事件をとっとと終わらせようとする外圧でしょうね。ですので、今の話はどうか他言無用に願いますよ。
But there's still so many questions left unanswered. Oishi-san grabbed his jacket that was hanging on the chair, put out his cigarette with the bottom of his foot, and started pretending to wave away the smoke floating around.
長居しました。あなたにとっての事件をせめて終わらせてあげようと思って来たつもりだったんですがね。かえって煙に巻いちゃったようで。
Absent-mindedly, he walked towards the door, looking at me, unable to speak, out of the corner of his eye.
もしも今後話したいことができたらいつでもお電話ください。さっきのお土産の中に私の名刺が入ってますんで、その時はまた素敵なお土産を持ってお見舞いに来ますよ。
Yoshi-san seemed to think I was still hiding something. That I, after all this, would be hiding something. I'm the one things are being hidden from. I'm the one who wants to know.
では、またいつかお会いしましょう。
I mean, if we were truthful from the beginning, then he wouldn't suspect that we were hiding shit, you know? That's just how it is. I listened to the tap-tap-tap of Ueshi-san walking down the hallway. I still couldn't return from my state of bewilderment. Damn. This is a boring-ass hospital room when you look at it from this angle. He wanted to end this incident as it applied to me. What was over? Nothing was over. The incident was still continuing. Oh fuck. What's happening? Who left this arm there? Then slip, an arm covered in fresh blood, came out from underneath the bed. I wasn't that surprised. This was an illusion I was seeing, seized with fear.
ケイちゃん。だから言ったでしょ?
I heard a guttural voice coming from under the bed. Damn, this is a really good illusion. I still recognize it as Mion's voice.
なんだ、ミオン。何を言ったって？
私、あの日に警告したよ。今日以降、私の姿を見たとしても、それは私の屍に取り付いた鬼なんだよって。
そうだな。言ってたよな。ごめん。ちょっと注意が足らなかったな。だから刺されちゃったんだな。
Yeah. At least he's honest about it, like he's being a little smart about it now. Possibly wounds sustained when she fell from the ladder. Many of her fingernails were broken and torn. Her arms slowly felt about on top of the bed, searching for mine.
あのさ、ミオン。俺今、こんな冗談を考えたんだ。
聞いてくれるか？
The Mion under the bed didn't answer.
例えばさ、俺が今日ここで死んじゃうんだよ。だけども明日以降もここにいて普通に生活してみせるんだよ。で、後でそれが大石のやつに分かってまたしても死亡日時が合わない、死んだはずの人間が生活していたって言って泡を食って大騒ぎするんだよ。高野さんにミオン、そして俺で3人目な。面白いだろ、笑えるだろ。
ケイちゃん、
笑えよ。それともあんまり面白くなかったか？
Mion's blood-stained hand groped around and found my wrist. Though her fingernails were torn, she gripped it hard as if scratching me.
加減しろよ。痛いって。
ケイちゃん、迎えに来たよ。
I tried to shake my wrist loose, but the strength she held it with was unbelievable and I couldn't. She was only gripping one wrist, and yet my whole body wouldn't move. I couldn't even twitch. My fingers were spread apart, and I couldn't make a fist either. And that fact, that I couldn't make a fist, reminded me of the restraining table. Interesting. I felt a crooked nail press against my left pinky fingertip. Yeah, that is indeed Mion. Mion's forehead was split open, and with a face covered with blood, she smiled and got right up just behind me.
何も終わってない。何も終わってない。この事件は何も終わってなんかない。まだ続いてる。まだまだ続いてる。誰かこの事件を終わらせてください。この残酷で無残で気の毒で悲しいこの事件を終わらせてください。それだけが俺の望みです。
あの時一つ叶えてあげたでしょ。今度はダメ。
That's quite a bit of laughter right there. Mion firmly held the nail down on my fingertip, and with her other hand, she slowly swung a mallet up into the air. Where the fuck did she get the mallet? And there we go. We don't survive, I'm guessing. Ah, the all-cast review. After some fucking tragedy, we can jump right back into some slice of life, of course. Well, I can't remember if I did my thoughts on Chapter 1 before I jumped into that. Chapter 4. Did I say Chapter 4? Chapter 1. After I went through Chapter... Sorry, it's late. After I went through Chapter 1, I don't know if I stated my thoughts before I actually jumped into the cast extra thing. But I will do that now. I would like to get my immediate thoughts out of the way. It is late, so bear with me before we jump into this. And also keep in mind, I've been recording 3 different sessions to get this one episode together. I didn't even know if I could squeeze all of this into one episode. I think I'll be able to. It'll be a long one, but that's okay. We needed to wrap this playthrough up anyways. So, I guess... Sure, some of the questions that we had were answered. We had more information given to us about, I guess, the structure and things that go on here in Hinamizawa, which I felt was awesome. I think it was cool that we met more characters. And by more characters, specifically Mion's sister that we had no idea existed in Chapter 1. It really expanded things. More questions were raised. Some questions from Chapter 1 were answered, and I think Keiichi, in terms of being a smart main character, he's really showing that he's not, but he did go a better route about things in this one compared to Chapter 1, where he was just very distrustful about his friends and the villagers of Hinamizawa, and I'm beginning to think that he was targeted by the Sonozaki family, or one of the other families, who knows, in chapter 1 because he was being problematic because of his distrust for everybody. He was probably being seen as an issue for no reason other than him being stupid and distrustful. And I think that's what led him to his downfall, is that he let himself become the enemy that he was so fearful of, or some shit like that. I don't know. In this, I'm very happy with the different direction it took. I think it was very interesting. Again, more questions raised, especially here at the end. It's still very open-ended as to what truly happened, because we just got murdered by Mion, who should have already been dead. I'm thinking what's actually happening here. Maybe Mion, it truly is dead, and we inflicted harm on ourselves because we've lost our mind. It's just straight up. Maybe that is... I'm trying to think about this rationally. We may have just straight up lost our mind. I cannot think of any other way to describe what has happened. Now, I think it's the same thing that happened with Shion. I cannot think of any other way that this had gone about without Mion being possessed by a demon in order for her corpse to still be walking around and performing actions. There's just no way. If we're going to bring some fiction into this, then okay, I guess this curse exists in some form. There are demons walking around, fantastic, and there's all that. If we're going the nonfiction route, then people do everything. People are always behind everything, and we saw a little bit about that with Mion performing the disappearances. But I don't know. It's hard to say what really happened there at the end and how we bit the dust this time around. It's hard to really understand what those syringes are all about, because they seem to be an item that was going to be used against us in Chapter 1, and an item that was maybe going to be used by Rika-chan here in this chapter. There's a lot of questions. All I can say is I am very, very curious. But I gotta watch my curiosity, because curiosity really killed Keiichi and a bunch of others in this one. Regardless, what a fun fucking ride. So we'll go into the all-cast, whatever the fuck, review session. And get some final thoughts from our actors, if you will.
日暮の泣く頃に水、Watanagashiを最後までお楽しみいただき、誠にありがとうございました。今度のシナリオはいかがだったでしょうか。
Oh, it's tight.
ちょっぴりでもお楽しみいただければ幸いです。ちょっぴりも何も。また、大大バッドエンドですわ。プンプンでございますことよ。プンプンなのです。
いやー、みんなお疲れ。まあ、終わり方こそあれだったけど、今回のシナリオは事実上ミオン編みたいなもんだったんじゃない？
なあ。
私大活躍で大満足。にゃははは。
あんなの大活躍とは言いませんですわ。私もリカも殺されちゃったですのよ。しかもサトコはただのとばっちりなのですよ。あんな死に方嫌なのですな。ほら泣かないで。みーちゃんメインのお話だったようにサトコちゃんメインのお話もあるんだから、今から楽しみだね。
きっとサトコがひどい目にあってじわりじわりといたぶり回される話に違いないね。
そうなのいや。
Alright.
みーちゃん、悪ふざけが過ぎるとレナもちょっとだけ怒るよ。みーがぺったんこなのです。
What the fuck?
なでなでしたくても頭がわからないのです。あ、膨らんできましたわ。無節操な体ですのね。
やあみんな。
Tomotake, you're
お疲れ
alive.
さん。
また遅れて申し訳ありませんね。
富武さんに大石さん、どうもお疲れ様でした。あれ、高野さんとしーちゃんはまだですか？
もちろん来てますよ。 今日はお招きいただきありがとうございますね。ここ座ってもいい？
どうぞですわよ。
これだけ一堂に集まると圧巻ね。どうかお手柔らかに。
じゃあ始めても大丈夫かな。これで全員かな。圭一を除けば全員なのです。
ってことは前原さんは相変わらず収録が終わってなくて早々に次回シナリオの台本読みなんですか？
A good old deja vu, if you will.
気の毒な話ね。私たちだけで盛り上がっちゃ悪い気がするわ。中野さん、そんなの気にしなくていいんですよ。こういう時は思いっきり盛り上がった方がかえって気を使わせないもんなんです。
それもそうですわね。せっかくこれだけ集まったのにお通夜じゃつまらないですわ。
じゃあ圭一君には悪いけど僕たちでやらせてもらおうか。
そうなれば決まりだね。じゃあみんなコップコップ。炭酸が嫌いな人いる？
大人の皆さんにはアルコールもありますよ。
Oh, but of course.
リカちゃんは何を飲む？ブドウジュース？オレンジジュース？
富竹のと同じ泡麦茶がいいのです。こーらリカちゃんもお酒はダメ。みんなコップ持ちましたですの？早く乾杯しないとジュースがぬるくなってしまいますわ。
おねえ、温度は誰が取るの？レナでいいでしょ。じゃあレナよろしく。
ではコンみんな綿流し終了。お疲れ様でした。
お疲れ様でした。
Well, that was loud.
じゃあみんな揃ったんだしね。また今回のシナリオを議論してみないかい？
Yes.
そうですね。
It'll give me more direction.
じゃあ自由意見でいきましょうか。誰か意見のある人はいますか？意見も何も今回のシナリオで謎は全て解けたのではありませんこと。
Oh, you little shit. You are wrong.
犯人はミオンさん。諸悪の根源は全部その崎家。
Not necessarily.
それで決着でございませんの？
Mm-mm.
そうだね。みーちゃんは犯人じゃないって信じてたんだけどな。
大甘ですよ。こんなのは前回の鬼隠しから十分予想できたことじゃないですか。むしろ予想通りすぎて呆れちゃうくらいですよ。
そうですね。前回のシナリオをプレイされた方の予想の大多数と合致するんじゃないでしょうかね。
Yeah, I'm gonna be completely honest. I recorded that like half a year ago, so I don't like yeah, more than half a year ago probably at this point. I don't remember what my predictions were. I don't fucking know.
みんなの期待通りの展開になったみたいなのです。じゃあこれで日暮らしの泣く頃に水のメインシナリオはほとんど終わりなのかな。全ての元凶はみーちゃんの園崎家で決まり？
そうかしら。私はむしろこれで園崎家犯人説はなくなったと思ってるくらいだけれど。あ、高野さんと意見が合いましたね。私も同じ意見。私はタタリなんか信じないけど、でも少なくとも園崎家が真犯人である確率は薄くなったと思ってるね。
どうしてなの？だってみーちゃんがみんなを殺したって自供したじゃない。そうですわ。私とリカを殺しておいて今さら犯人じゃないなんてどういう意味なんですの？
別に煙に巻くつもりはないよ。たださ、私ミオンが全ての犯人だとするにはいろいろと無理が多いんだよ。ちょっと考えればすぐわかるよ。
僕は園崎家犯人説の近からず遠からずに真相があると確信してるんだけど、ぜひミオンちゃんの説が聞きたいね。
ではご拝聴。ラストで私がさ、過去の事件に自分は全て関与しているって白状するでしょ。
Yes.
あそこで感じた大きな違和感が根拠かな。だって考えてみなよ。過去の事件が園崎家の起こしたものならすごいことだよ。だってどれもほぼ完全犯罪でしょ。園崎家以外の犯人や事故で決着するという究極の犯罪だもの。そりゃそうでしょう。だって大きな力を持つ園崎家が暗躍してるんだもの。完全犯罪なんてお茶の子さいさいでしょ。そこが違和感なんだよ。過去4年間園崎本家の気配を全く感じさせずに、あれだけ上手に人を殺したり消したりしてきたんだよ。そこへ行くと5年目の事件はすごくチープなんだよ。手当たり次第に片っ端から消して殺して、しかも園崎家とのつながりは簡単に看破できちゃうしさ。
そう言われてみればそうだね。過去の事件はたたりとも犯罪ともつかない不思議な連続事件だったけど、今回の5年目の事件だけはすごく乱暴だったもんね。何を言ってるのかよくわかりませんわ。リカにはわかります？つまり園崎家が本当に犯人なら5年目の事件ももっともっと上手にやったと言っているのですよ。じゃあつまり何ですの？私とリカを殺したのはミオンさんではなく、ミオンさんに取り付いた鬼の仕業だったってことですの？
Maybe.
ほらほら、やっぱり前回の私の予想通りミオンさんは悪い人じゃなかったのですわ。そうそう、レナもサトコちゃんも何かが取り付いて悪いことをしてるって意見だったもんね。じゃあやっぱり私たちの説は正しかったのかな？
私も前回から引き続きたたり説ですが、今回のシナリオでさらに確信を深めましたよ。ラストのラストで私が明かす、目撃されていたにもかかわらずその数日前に死んでいたという高野さんやミオンさんの情報はまさにそれを裏付けると思います。
あらあら、前回は弱かったたたり派が今回は随分強気ね。人間犯人説の皆さんには反論はないのかしら？
I don't know what to fucking think.
前回人間犯人説だったのは確かみーちゃんにリカちゃん、それから富武さんでしたよね。では張り切って反論をお願いします。
参ったな。うまい言葉が思いつかないな。
たたり派の根拠の一つが合わない死亡時刻なんですよね。じゃあそのトリックを崩せれば人間犯人説は立証できるわけですね。お、シオンには何かいい反論があるの？まあ一応。でも私人間犯人説ではお姉と同じ意見ですけど、園崎家が主犯だと思ってる点ではお姉とは違いますよ。それでもよければ反論してみせますけど。
何でも結構ですわ。これがたたりじゃないというならその証拠を示してごらんなさいませ。
じゃあシオンちゃん、さっきから話題になってるミオンちゃんは事件当日に井戸に落ちて死んでいたにもかかわらず数日後に現れて圭一君とあなたを殺したのはどうやってなのかしら？
Yeah, let's fucking hear it.
ズバリ園崎姉妹共犯説です。理由は簡単だって、お姉はあの時点でもう死んでるんですから、ケイちゃんをさせるのは私しかいないんです。私がお姉の変装してケイちゃんを刺す。そして実質へ戻り幽霊との取っ組み合いの狂言をして飛び降り自殺。
But then who killed us at the end?
強いて言えばこの場合のミオンちゃんは泥をかぶる役だね。村長さんたちに直接手を下し、シオンちゃんはただの被害者の形にする。そして井戸の中に姿を隠していれば変装したシオンちゃんが神出鬼没にいくらでも殺人を犯せるって寸法さ。
なるほどね。だとすると ミオンさんにとっての誤算は2つ。死体が見つかってしまったことと、隠れているだけのつもりが死んでしまったことってことになるわけですね。
あれれれ、確かになんとなく辻褄が合うような。
でもやっぱり納得できないでしょう。過去の完全犯罪の華麗さと違いすぎるもの。その計画、たとえうまくいってもミオンは悪役でしょ。一生隠れて、あるいはシオンのふりをしたりして生きていかなきゃならないんでしょ。窮屈すぎ。こんなの完全犯罪とは言わないって。
つまり死ぬにせよ消えるにせよ、ミーはいなくなってしまうわけなのです。
リカちゃま、それいい意見。つまり園崎ミオンが表舞台からいなくなるのは彼女らのシナリオの一部だと思うわけです。だからラストでミオンはポンポンと過去の事件の罪をかぶるんですよ。全部の事件の責任を一身に引き受けて退場。そうすることで過去の事件の真犯人を隠蔽できる。つまり今年の事件はチープなんかじゃなく、過去の事件を丸ごと完全犯罪にするための締めくくりの事件、そういう位置づけになるのかな。
一番疑われている園崎家の若き当主が全てを自白して失踪。彼女もしくは園崎家以外の真犯人にとってこれほど美味しい結末はないってことになるのかしらね。
話が全然わかりませんのよ。ミオンさんが罪をかぶるってどういう意味ですの？犯人なんじゃないんですの？つまりね、連続開始事件の真犯人が別にいるの。その人を守るためにみーちゃんが過去の事件も全て自分が起こしたと嘘の告白をしたってみんなは言ってるの。
これは劇中のセリフになりますが、とんだ名探偵さんがいたもんです。
It's true.
確かにちょっと説得力を感じますよ。
真の犯人をごまかすために起こした事件、それが私の推理。さらに言えばその真の犯人は園崎家以外の存在だと思ってるんだけどね。
4年連続で完全犯罪に成功した謎の人物をさらに守るためにミオンちゃんが起こした捜査か乱の事件ということかしら。
そういうことです。鬼隠しのシナリオで名前だけ登場した監督ってのがかなり怪しいかな。
すごいです。実に辻褄が合いますのですよ。
Wait a minute. I kind of forgot about that.
私はそれでも園崎家プラス姉妹が犯人だと思ってますけどね。御三家による古いしがらみを断ち切るために姉妹が起こした過去の清算のための事件、それが私の推理です。
過去の清算ってのはつまり暗躍の歴史に終止符を打つため御三家の罪を最後の当主のミオンが全てかぶり姉妹揃って退場したってことだね。
そういうことです。私たち姉妹が悩みに悩み抜いた末に選んだ悲しい物語だったというわけですできすぎですね。
すごいです。実に辻褄が合いますですよ。あれあれ、なんだかリカちゃんにも意見がありそうだね。リカちゃんもどうぞ。では皆さんに質問なのです。圭一はどうして刺されなければいけないのですか？リカ、そんなのは決まってますわよ。入っちゃいけない細具店に勝手に入ったからに決まってますわ。
こうして思い返すと、他のシナリオでも死んだ富武さんと高野さんの死もきっと細具殿に忍び込んだせいってことなんでしょうな。
Yeah, that's kind of what I've been thinking about for a while, but that doesn't really add up because then wouldn't Rika and the mayor still have to disappear in the same fashion that they did here? If this is going to be the same story, just with some elements and events taking place, differently. But still, going through a normal flow of time, that would still happen, right? Every one of those events would still need to occur.
ありゃ
おかしなことになってきたわね。
おかしなことって何がですか？あ、レナさん、そうですわ。思い出してくださいませ。そうなのです。例えば鬼隠しのシナリオでは圭一は西宮殿には忍び込んでいないのに命を狙われているのです。
ははは。
それはきっとほら、ひなみ沢はよそ者を嫌うんだろ。だから圭一君も命を狙われたんだよ。
Well, hold on there. They protected Keiichi as well.
それはおかしいでしょう。だったらケイちゃんの両親だって襲われていいはず。どう見ても両親に危機が迫っていたようには見えないね。今回だけでなく他のシナリオでも。
さあさあ、人間犯人説の皆様方、圭一さんが狙われる理由がちゃんと説明できませんと人間が犯人とは立証できませんでしたよ。
でもたたり説だとしても、やはり前原さんが前回も今回も襲われる理由が分かりませんけどね。
もう一息で解明できそうだったけど、やっぱり謎はたくさん残ってるみたいだね。
圭一君以外の人の死には何かしら理由が見つけられるんだけど、鬼隠しでも
My bad.
たらい回しでも、
Oh, last time was fucking
今
weird.
回の綿流しでも、
Not to say that this wasn't.
西宮殿に踏み入るのとは無関係に狙われてる。
では今回だけではなく他のシナリオでも殺されるようなことをしちゃってるんじゃありませんこと？
I just think he was being problematic. He was making himself out to be an enemy.
なるほど。他のシナリオと今回の前原さんの行動に共通項が見つけられれば、それが全体の事件の謎を解く鍵になりそうですね。
ざっとシナリオを読み比べたけど、圭一君なりに日々を送ってると思うよ。西宮殿の一件さえ除けば圭一君の日々の暮らしに不審な点は見当たらないけどな。
圭一君、今回と他のシナリオの時に何をやったのかな？殺されるような悪いこと。迷った時には本人に聞いてみるのが一番なのですよ。
Ring him up.
ほほう、俺が一人寂しく次回の台本読みをしている間にみんなはそういう話題で盛り上がっていたわけか。
Yes.
ほう、
そういうわけなの。だからね、圭一君の自分の胸に聞いてみてほしいんだけど。
ケイちゃん、殺されるようなどんな悪いことをやったわけ？
私にいつも働いている狼藉のせいに違いないですわ。僕に時々危ない視線を向けて妄想に浸っている顔はまさに犯罪者そのものなのです。
Wait, when does that happen?
そうそう、年頃の女の子たちに囲まれて毎日幸せってのがそもそもの罪のような気がするな。
それは確かに重罪ですね。前原さん、実に羨ましい主人公役ですよ。
Oh, not at all. He fucking sucks. Like, he just continues to get himself in more fucking shit for no reason.
たまには変わってください。
I mean, the slice of life moments with him are fun, though.
まあ確かにあれだけ役得がいろいろあれば最後にちょっと刺されるくらいお安いご用よね。
というわけで圭一さん、あなたの犯した罪を思い出しまして。
今回も他のシナリオでも清く正しく生きてる俺がいつもラストはひどい目に。その上さらに自分の胸に聞いてみろだと。聞きたいのは俺の方だぞ。これは何かの謀略だ。
かわいそかわいそです。今度頭をなでなでしてあげますですよ。
今回のシナリオを読んだ上で改めて鬼隠しを読むべきかな。
I do not have time for that.
私はミオンの立場になって綿流しを読み返してみるよ。ケイちゃんの立場で読んだ時とは違う発見があるかもね。
私は鬼の仕業だとずーっと思ってますのよ。すべての現象とトリックはすべて鬼で説明がつきますのよ。
I just can't go with something that's superficial, you know?
なんだかプラズマみたいなのです。プレイしてくださった皆さんはどうお感じになりましたか？ぜひ先に進む前にいろいろと推理してみてくださいね。
まだまだ先は長いですけど頑張ってくださいね。
それでは引き続き日暮らしの泣く頃に推をお楽しみください。
Yeehaw. I didn't state this last time, or earlier, or whenever, but I think the next chapter is Sadako's. I could be wrong, it might be Rika-chan's. But I think it's kind of interesting that as we go through these chapters, you know, it's obviously centered around one character. We just got our Watanagashi party achievement. I don't know what else there is for achievements to get, but as I was saying, we learn about the character that the chapter focuses on, and we kind of get prepared for the next chapter and the character that will be focused there. We learned a little bit, just a teeny tiny bit, about Sadako. We learned how her family's fucking gone, really, and how she is apparently cursed, according to Mion. And that's it. And then we, you know, learned a teeny tiny bit more about Rika, and really just her place in the village, in this political stature, if you will, of the three families. And, of course, we learned that while also learning a lot more about Mion, and also her sister Shion. So we're kind of getting ready for what the next chapters will pertain to, because we did learn a little bit about Mion before we entered this chapter back in the first chapter. I find that a little interesting, really cool in a way to kind of prepare us for what's to come, to expand more on what's been hinted at, so we're ready to go. I think the next chapter is Sadako's, and then I would believe it would be Rika-chan's, or maybe it's vice versa. And then after that, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if we'll begin to maybe get some answers. I don't know if we'll revisit any of these stories that we've gone through, or if we'll just continue to get different timelines of events. I have absolutely no idea, but in an attempt to get all the achievements, I guess we can look at the tips. Or actually, we've done all the tips. Where's the gallery shit? Is there not one here? There's a chapter jump. Ah, yes, perfect. This is the best way to organize things. Without titles. Just Watanagashi and whatever day. There's a config. I don't know if I got all the achievements. I can check real quick if it doesn't fuck up my recording. Yeah, okay, you know what? Never mind. I did get all the achievements. Perfect. I thought there'd be an achievement saying I got all the achievements, but one did not pop up. Well, guys, this was a fun time. Again, I recorded like 3 different sessions here, and they were all almost like an hour long. I think the first one wasn't. The second 2 here definitely were, especially this one. It is 11:42 at night. I'm really tired. I'm going to try and get this video ready for the following day so you guys can enjoy it. This was a lot of fun to record, just like the first chapter. I didn't really feel pressured to get it done by Halloween, which was nice. Not doing that again, or at least not putting myself in a position to pressure myself to finish a playthrough. I don't know when I'm going to get to chapter 3. I really don't, but before we wrap up chapter 2, I would like to thank miniSaren, I think that's how you pronounce their name, for buying this game for me. This is the first time a viewer of mine has ever bought a game for me, or has bought some games for me before. I think like Steins Gate Zero, and I recorded that one. And it's always nice to get that. It helps. It actually does help me because, sure, while I may have an income, it is nice to be able to do YouTube without having to dip into my income in order to entertain you guys. I like to entertain you guys, but obviously sometimes I do have to fork up some cash. So I do appreciate miniSaren for coming on and gifting me this game however months ago that was, because it has been quite a while since I started this. I don't know when I'll get to chapter 3. If you guys ever do want to support me in a way so I can get games for playthroughs, I do have a Patreon, or you can hit me up on my Discord. There's a link in the description for all of that, and you guys can gift me games. No promises on if I'll play them, but in terms of the Higurashi series, I definitely will try to get through all of it. I do want to state that now that I am done with 2 chapters of it, I am hooked. I want to know what is going to happen. So I'll try my best to stick with it. It's just going to take some time to really get through these playthroughs because I have other focuses. Chaos Head is going to come up at some point. And also, I just don't want to get completely burnt out on this, like how I burned myself out on Persona 5. Fuck me. But yeah, Chapter 3 will come soon, and along with that, Chapter 4, and we'll continue on, and we'll hopefully figure out what the hell's going on. I hope that you guys are willing to stay patient and stick around with me to go through all of that. Thank you so much for watching this playthrough. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like, subscribe for more stuff that I do here on the channel, and of course, to be ready to go for Higurashi When They Cry, Chapter 3, whatever that's called. I will see you all then, or I will see you all in some other video here on the channel. Thank you again for watching, and take it easy.